Leadership Training by Lucille Cedercrans. Chapter 1. Group Integration. Techniques in Service. Cooperative Leadership. Problems in Relationships. Manifesting the Vision. First, I should like to make a few suggestions regarding group integration and the way in which you can gain the most from it. Most of the instruction which you are to receive will be projected on first and seventh rays and will have to do primarily with first and seventh ray techniques in service. As is always the case with a group of potential leaders, it may present some problems in relationship. Realize that leadership, insofar as the disciple is concerned, is a matter of cooperative, creative service. First, it will be necessary to overcome the competitive patterns which are, particularly in the present civilization, related to the subject of leadership. The moment that the concept of leadership makes an impact upon the consciousness of the individual in this particular society and civilization, it creates within him reactive patterns of competition, for the present structure is built upon the basis of competition for leadership. Those of you who have had some experience in endeavoring to answer the need for leadership have met with the effects of this particular condition, have come, unconsciously perhaps, face to face with this problem. Within you there has been stirred into greater or lesser degrees of activity the competitive reactive patterns. The concept of leadership toward which you are aspiring within your own soul consciousness, and which you are on that level ideating into a relationship with your own function in the world of affairs, is that of cooperative leadership, shared responsibility in the service of the divine plan for humanity. This concept overshadows, not only a group, not only the overall group life, but the whole of humanity today, who, because of its particular point in evolution, finds cooperative leadership, the sharing of responsibility for the welfare of humanity, to have become the common necessity. The soul then, the soul life of humanity, aspires toward the perfect ideation of this particular concept, an ideation which will relate cooperative leadership, inspirational creativity within the life and affairs of mankind, with the present world conditions. A group, then, coming together for the purpose of receiving training in leadership, brings into an invocative and evocative focus both the problem within the human consciousness, the effort in the soul life to ideate the solution to that problem, and, by means of alignment with the hierarchy and with your own monadic center, you invoke the solution through you as a channel. Thus in one sense you are, as a group, a mediator bringing that which overshadows the soul into its right activity within the soul life, and from here the ideated solution into the life and affairs, by means of your own activity, of the human family. Try to realize, then, as you meet with problems of relationship, and of the organization of the overall group life into that activity which will best serve the Ashramic purposes and plan, that being to a degree representative, you are serving humanity in the very focusing of a particular problem. If you see it as a world problem rather than either a personal or a group problem, you will be able to deal with it as such, and thus help to formulate that science of right relationship in the level of leadership which can then be of service to humanity. For our purposes, the monad is defined as the focus of spiritual individuality or Christ consciousness. The reactive patterns within the equipment have to be overcome, brought under control, before the disciple can actually enter into the field of leadership and serve effectively within it. You are going to be given specific problems in leadership activity to resolve within the group. This will be a part of your training. You will be presented with problems which constitute, at this time, the obstacles to the leadership function, on a discipleship level, within the world of affairs. In working out these problems, you then come into the beginning of your own function in this particular field. You are initiating a period of growth and development, and a service activity, which is to cover many incarnations. Competition and striving for leadership is a fallacy. You are working with a plan that takes in many incarnations. Realize as you consider this that you are in no way being criticized or reprimanded. You are what you are in consciousness and in instrumentality. You are a part of the present civilization, as well as being a part of the Ashramic effort. So that your equipment, with all of its apparent defects, if you would call them that, though from my perspective they are not, is a part of your service equipment. Because in meeting the problem the equipment presents, you are helping to solve the problem for humanity. You are coming to grips with the human situation, finding the solution for it, experimenting with the wielding of energy, force, and substance, and learning to be effective. Now in this particular incarnation, look at your position. It is not one of importance in the world sense. None of you holds a position, objectively, which carries any great influence insofar as world affairs are concerned, but you are in training. Where you will be, shall we say, in the next incarnation or in 3 incarnations from now, will be something else. Those individuals who function in the world in a leadership capacity today, and particularly those on a discipleship level, have come through what you are entering, in their own relationship with their particular service job, the problems of humanity in their time and place, etc. One does not attain to a position of world influence without having undergone training for it prior to that time. You can deflate the ego when it appears to expand itself overmuch, and at the same time strengthen the spiritual identification with this realization. The effort now is being made to train disciples, something rather unique in that the disciple who receives his training today receives it in the midst of the daily life and affairs of the human family. Prior to this time, the disciple received his training, you might say, during an incarnation or several incarnations of retreat from the world of affairs. The black magician evolves his magic just as the white magician evolves his white magic. So does leadership evolve on both paths. Then do the disciples of both the white and the black lodge come into position of equal influence in the world of affairs, and I am speaking now insofar as the outer appearance is concerned. Something that I would have you consider very deeply is the subject of the long-range plan and the fact that as surely as you are evolving, as surely as you have taken certain steps upon the path of discipleship, you are individually and collectively moving toward, through function after function, positions of influence in world affairs. You are now building the foundation, even in your service activity, for what you will be doing later in a more conscious way. You will have overcome the built-in patterns which result in competition so that you will be able to function in a cooperative leadership pattern. But it is necessary now, if this is to occur, that you begin to work with the concept that you begin to enter into a cooperative leadership relationship with one another, in dealing with the problems with which you are presented in the present service activity. In the future, when the disciple now being trained, has, by reason of his evolutionary development, created a position of power and influence in the world of affairs, then he will not be presented with this particular problem. This is what we are working toward now. By that time, cooperative leadership will have become a fact in nature among that particular group. That group then will be able to demonstrate the perfection of cooperative leadership and so change the present civilization. Between now and that time, a certain amount of influence can be brought to bear upon world conditions through the subjective influence of the group as it meets with those problems which are those obstacles to cooperative leadership. As the group meditates upon, as it brings into its thought life, emotional feeling life, and into the substance of its daily action, this concept of cooperative leadership, it sets into motion a movement of the energy, force, and substance of the concept itself. That degree of expansion and embodiment of the concept that the group is able to achieve is made available to leaders functioning in the world today via the subjective relationship of the group with those leaders. Then they can draw upon this reservoir of spiritual effort, energy, force, and substance, and use it in their particular dealings with world problems. Understand that the disciple functioning within the world of affairs in a position of influence today has not within his grasp the concept of cooperative leadership. The concept is new. The concept has relationship with the age into which we are now moving. It becomes the common necessity because of the old concept of leadership, the old methods which produced the building of the present civilization, and the evolutionary development of humanity up to this point are outmoded and outworn. It precipitates its own defects, so to speak, its lack in providing a solution for humanity. So that within the world today we find the problem, particularly on a leadership level, being of such a nature that only the concept of cooperative leadership can solve it. Therefore, pressure is put to bear upon the disciple who functions today in a position of world influence, world power. None of the old methods or techniques work. The thread of force does not work. Nothing which has in the past been applicable to the problems with which a leader was faced is today applicable. Therefore these leaders, these disciples, are under tremendous pressure. They in turn put a pressure upon a group such as this, that through its invocative effort, because of its very nature, it will bring into focus that solution which is right for this time and place, that which overshadows humanity as the right answer. Therefore, you have a very definite service relationship with all disciples who function in positions of leadership, in positions of influence and power in the world of affairs today. It is vitally important to the development of your service potential that you recognize this relationship and that you learn to make use of it. For here, in the subjective sense, you bring your weight to bear upon the solution to the problems of humanity. You bring your forces into the effort, and in so doing, place yourselves in line for your own function in like positions at a later date. You are in service to the degree that you are able to recognize your relationship, maintain the subjective link or relationship with the leadership in the world, and at the same time, through your own efforts, bring into focus this concept. Do not forget that you are going to be functioning on a little higher level than previously, for you will be ideating on soul levels a new concept in relationship to the human family. When I tell you it is new, this is exactly what I mean. You as yet have no grasp whatsoever of cooperative leadership. As a group in cooperation with me, you will be ideating as I project the impulse for that ideation. Now once again, and from perhaps a different perspective, I wish to discuss the first problem with which you will be faced, and probably the last problem in the initiation and the completion of this training. That is, the problem of relationships, which is always activated, always presented, when a group of potential leaders come together for any purpose whatsoever. You will be invoking a great deal of first and seventh ray energy, and hence, in your daily life and affairs, you will bring into the brain consciousness many ideas. Some of them will be good, some of them will be not so good, and some of them may be ridiculous. But in most instances you will love your ideas. You will carry the dynamism, the enthusiasm of the first ray and your love of your work. The first problem with which you could be faced would be the cold water effect of discovering that your ideas are perhaps not necessarily apropos, or that someone else perhaps has a better idea. You have to learn to use first ray in your interrelationships with one another not as swords but as interrelating lines of inspiration, of actually inspirational relationships. You are building a network of light, not an army of fencers. This is important. When you wield the first ray as a sword, let it be as a group one two-edged sword of discrimination. It is important to define areas of responsibility, areas of function. This is the first step that must be taken in the organization of the energy, force, and substance of any life into an activity. Then you can begin to find your own function, and each one, as the group function is clarified, can define his particular function in relationship to it. This is the beginning of cooperative leadership. Cooperative leadership necessitates a network of leaders who share a responsibility for the manifestation of the divine plan for humanity as they see it. It has to be seen as a network rather than as a graded level or chain of command. At the leadership level, if you are to make any kind of a beginning, you must think in terms of group leadership, of cooperative leadership, where each relates with the other in his proper function according to his particular vision of that plan and his responsibility for its manifestation. Thus, each must allow for each other's function and endeavor to cooperate with it. Now on this level you are not going to have anyone making appointments. The group itself may make appointments from among those who relate with it in an organizational sense below the level of leadership. But the leadership itself is that of a cooperative group endeavor, each one aligned with the divine plan in such a way as to inspire a following within his area of responsibility. Also, as you proceed, you must think in terms of cooperative leadership as overshadowing, as superseding any organizational structure which you shall create, because, as time proceeds, you will find the necessity, insofar as your service activity is concerned, to enter into different organizational structures. 1 or 3 or 5 or more may organize another structure here. Each of these structures then act as a part of the service equipment of the entire group and thus of the Ashramic group life. Therefore, the network of leadership must be seen as functioning above and yet through these vehicles. Thus, the integration of such a group is based upon its shared vision of the divine plan, upon its shared alignment with divine purpose, and upon its shared responsibility for the carrying out into manifestation of that purpose and plan. Therefore, each of you, as you come into your own function in the leadership sense, must define that function so that each of the others of you can cooperate with it. Thus, this is the first step you are taking. Each one of you, as you begin to realize more fully what your function is, as differentiated from the function of others, defines it and clarifies it for the group, giving each an opportunity to cooperate with each function. Thus, you have the beginning of a true cooperative effort on the leadership level. Therefore, begin with first things first. If you are going to establish such a structure as one vehicle through which the group can work, then you must begin with first things first. This first thing is cooperative leadership, where each comes into an understanding of his right function, is able to define that function as well as enter into it, and thus inspire cooperation from the others on their own levels, and inspire a following from within that humanity in which he is focused in his service relationship. I would have you also understand that as each one of you comes into an understanding of your function, bit by bit, that it may change. You may find yourself, today, in the natural place or position to fulfill a particular function. But this changes as you, through evolution and training, come into that function which is the function of the soul within the Ashramic group life. As you begin to arrive at a greater clarity regarding function, there will come an understanding of the center function and its application, its appropriation, its utilization, in the economy of the overall group life. Now, each individual, from the beginning student clear through the entire group, has his proper function within the group, in relationship to the group function itself. Before you can organize the energy, force, and substance of the group into a planned activity, there must be an understanding of function, both of the group function and of the individual function. The hierarchy functions on a cooperative leadership basis. There are offices within the hierarchy which have to be filled. These are filled by those whose evolutionary status, whose individual expression of the one life and relationship within the one life, and whose capacity makes or places them in such a position. They are not appointed. They move into their office naturally and normally as they relate their function with the purpose and plan of the total hierarchy. The leadership group inspires its followers. Each one moves into his right function because it is his right function. I would have you realize that this is a class in leadership training. You have been given a problem to consider, not to build a legal structure, but rather to consider this first problem involved in the organization of the energy, force, and substance of the group life into a planned activity. Now, whether or not you arrive at a solution, and whether or not the solution you arrive at is put into operation, is beside the point at this time. What is important is that you are making an effort to understand this first problem, which is always presented in the establishing of any leadership group or network, which is to be based upon the concept of cooperative leadership. You are going to be faced with the competitive patterns within the equipment which could very definitely either block the individual from recognizing an other's right function or, on the other hand, create a concept of function which was not right function. You will find this a most difficult effort in some ways, for the energy of the first and seventh ray, which you are receiving, is a blend. It has to be directed to a specific goal. It has to be brought in via a one-pointed focus, set into a specific direction, and maintained in that direction until the goal is achieved. You find this difficult in arriving at a goal and then moving the first ray along a specific direction. Instead, it takes as many directions as there are individuals within the group. A disciple is responsible for the manifestation of his particular vision, and, in the degree of his vision, for the divine plan for humanity. His area, and his degree of responsibility, is dictated by his vision of the plan, and his responsibility is to that plan. Thus, his vision indicates his function. The definition of the first ray, insofar as this particular planetary effort is concerned, is to bring into focus and to interpret cosmic love, that love which is pure reason. The cognition of its purpose then gives it direction as the will to love. Consciously condition and qualify first ray as the energy and the concept of divine love wisdom. Chapter 2. The function of the group life. Creating a body of wisdom. The function of the overall group life, within the body of humanity, is to provide the vehicle through which the influence of the divine plan for humanity can move the energy, force, and substance of that humanity into the activity of the divine plan in manifestation. How shall the group function? First, by creating with the energy, force, and substance at hand, a body of wisdom within the etheric network of the human family which will, in its turn, move the energy, force, and substance, the thought life, the astral emotional feeling life, and the substantial activity into the activity of the divine plan for humanity. I would have you think particularly upon this concept. The overall group life, over a period of several incarnations, but beginning now, creating out of the energy, force, and substance at hand, its own thought life, its own emotional feeling life, and its own substance, its own action, a body of the wisdom within the etheric network of humanity which will, in its turn, move the energy, force, and substance of humanity, that is its thought life, the race-mind thought life, its astral emotional life, and its action, that to which it gives substance, into the activity of the divine plan for humanity. This is the function of the overall group life in direct relationship to the divine purpose being focused by this synthetic ashram. I have given you, very briefly, a new concept regarding group function both in the larger sense and in the smaller sense, and if you will look for it, a new concept regarding your own service function in relationship to that of the group. Chapter 3. A vision inspire initiatory activity. Fearlessness. Wielding divine purpose. The concept of leadership is approached by the disciple from the perspective of invocative and evocative activity. The leader in the field of discipleship has, first of all, eliminated from his own brain consciousness and his desire nature those connotations which are given to this term within the race-mind consciousness. The leader is not one who, through competitive methods, assumes or creates for himself positions of outer importance, of dictatorial influence, or of hypnotic influence. The disciple/leader is one who is inspired. 1. Via his vertical alignment with his own higher consciousness. 2. With the truth guiding that higher consciousness, and 3. With those who, in cooperation with his higher consciousness, overshadow him with the plan. He is inspired with a vision of human betterment, a vision of spiritual growth and development which includes every human being incarnate upon the planet. He then, in his own turn, uses his vision in such a way as to inspire a following from within the circumference of his sphere of influence. He is first inspired as he invokes, via the strength of his dedication and his aspiration to the divine plan for humanity. He in turn then inspires others as he evokes from them a response, not to himself, but to that vision of the plan which he represents, which he is attempting to convey, which he is attempting to manifest. Thus his obligation, his duty, is, through his capacity for loving understanding, to evoke, to attract into a service of the divine plan for humanity, that state of consciousness within the body of humanity with which he is karmically related. He is not concerned, at any time, with his popularity, with whether he is liked or disliked by those with whom he works, whether he is judged on the basis of truth or on the basis of superficiality. With these things he is at no time concerned. He is concerned only with the response of that state of consciousness with which he is karmically related to the service of the divine plan for humanity. The disciple who tends to build a following which adheres strictly to his words, to his authority, to his direction in specific activity, is functioning on a probationary level and has not achieved to the status of leadership. The true leader will inspire that growth and development which will result in leadership among his followers so that they, in their turn, will move out into the body of humanity in various fields of service and initiate their own activity, an activity which is cooperative with, but which is not dependent upon, that of the original disciple. Now this is one of the basic differences between the initiate disciple, functioning in the world as a leader, and the would-be disciple who is attempting to function in the world as a leader. The would-be disciple, the probationer who has not yet completed his probationership, tends to build a following, to hold that following in close relationship to himself, to render it dependent upon his direction. The initiate disciple ever seeks to inspire initiatory activity within others, to free as quickly as is possible his following from his specific direction. One point which is important here is leadership activity. The leader must be truly fearless in his relationship with those he has attracted to him, in that he must permit them to make whatsoever mistakes in leadership, in the initiatory activity within which they must enter, that are necessary to their growth and development. This is the most difficult hurdle that the disciple leader has to overcome. He inspires, he works with the energy of inspiration, and I would have you think in these terms, the energy of inspiration. He is moved by that energy and by that impulse. He brings it into his own being. He sets it into motion throughout his own instrumentality. He then wields that energy to evoke from within his following the same type of activity within which he is engaged. By this I refer to service activity, to inspirational leadership within the affairs of men. He inspires others to serve the divine plan in their relationship to that divine plan. Not in his relationship to it, or in his concept of that relationship, but rather within their own particular individualized relationship with the divine plan. Thus, he encourages, always, their movement into initiatory activity, permitting them to make whatever mistakes are necessary to their own growth and development as leaders. There is a definite difference between a teacher and a leader, though a teacher may be a leader. This does not necessarily mean that a teacher is always a leader. A teacher, primarily, is endeavoring to inspire the student to seek, to understand, and to embody the wisdom. The leader is concerned with the disciple's initiatory activity. He is endeavoring to inspire leadership in others at whatever level he finds the other. This brings us to the next concept that I wish to project regarding leadership. He who would be a leader must first realize that every human being is a leader, that every human being has within himself the potential of leadership here and now, that potential, that inborn capacity of the soul within the persona, can be awakened and inspired into leadership activity within its particular sphere of influence. Any disciple who functions in a leadership capacity functions primarily on the first ray, that is, from a first-ray mental focus. He may or may not be equipped with first-ray insofar as the other bodies are concerned. He may or may not have a first-ray mental body, but he is capable of a first-ray mental focus. It is from this focus that he functions in a leadership capacity. The energy of inspiration is a peculiar wielding of divine purpose, of first-ray energy. It is the first ray given a peculiar and specific directional movement. That is as far as I shall go in relationship to this at this particular point. I would like to come back now to the previous concept, that he who would be a leader, and we refer now to the disciple who would function in a leadership capacity, must first realize that innate within every human being upon the planet, regardless of his point of development, there is a capacity for creative leadership within his particular sphere of influence, within his particular environment. It is with this aspect of humanity that the disciple/leader relates. He makes his relationship with the inborn creative leadership capacity of the soul, within every individual whom he contacts. He sparks this first with the energy of inspiration, and works then steadily to evoke this capacity, this creative activity, outward into manifestation, giving always the other the freedom to express his leadership in his own time, and place, and way. This is a most basic and important concept for you to grasp, for you to expand within your own consciousness, to arrive at a better understanding of the humanity focused within every individual you contact, and to embody in action. The leader always makes himself available to help, to give aid when it is asked for. He never interferes with unwanted advice, but he does act in an advisory capacity when there is need for him and when that need is expressed. Relate that which I have projected to the concept of cooperative leadership, expanding then your understanding of this concept. Chapter 4. Subjective leadership energy, force, and substance. Your relationship to humanity. The power of manifestation. My subject is subjective leadership, as a part of your life training for this incarnation, and I might add, as a major part of your service contribution during this incarnation. The concept of energy, force, and substance has been somewhat vague in all of your minds up to this time. There is coming into the group consciousness a clearing somewhat of the confusion regarding the subject, and certainly a receptivity for the clarification of it. We shall approach the clarification from one specific and particular perspective at this time. Energy you already know of as a potential. Think of it now as a body of thought, potential to any outer appearance. Force is the power of manifestation. It is the field of contact of any thought or body of thought. In its lower aspect, it is the active as differentiated from the inactive emotional nature of humanity, individually and collectively. Substance, a concept which is more vague in the group consciousness than is any other, is the directional movement of energy and force through the etheric network. It is the inner etheric action which gives substance, and, as a result, outer appearance, to that energy and force which has been set into motion. First, consider the picture of current events in the field of international relationships. What lies behind the outer picture? What lies behind the appearance of wrong relationships in this particular field? Energy, force, and substance, moving in a specific direction, giving then a substantial body of conflict to those causes which man himself has created and set into motion. What is causal to the world picture in the energy sense? It is the collective thought life of the whole of humanity. This is causal to the outer appearance in the field of international relationships. Every individual, then, and every group of individuals, shares in this cause to a greater or lesser degree, according to the type, strength, and quality of his thought. What is the force, the power factor, behind the outer picture? It is the collective emotional life of humanity. It is the force of man's feeling nature, from moment to moment, from hour to hour, from day to day, which is causal to the outer appearance. What is causal, in the substantive sense, to the outer picture? It is the action which man takes within his brain, the action within the brain which releases into outer appearance a directional movement of energy, force, and substance. I shall come back to this brain activity shortly. For the moment, I would have you pause and find your place, in an energy sense, within the causal activity of humanity, to this outer picture which most of you scarcely see. Consider your own thought life in its totality. Now, I am not referring to the moment-to-moment brain activity in which you constantly engage. I am referring to that body of thought, much of which you are as yet little aware, which is in a sense, a prime mover insofar as your outer life and affairs are concerned. That subjective body of thought which is, to a very great degree as yet, the directing agent of your life and affairs. Consider this, and place it in that area of cause in an energy sense within the body of humanity, finding your contribution, insofar as is possible to you, to the outer picture. One of the finest observations that any student can make, in the beginning of wisdom, is the discovery of where he stands. To realize that you do not positively control the directional movement of your energy, force, and substance, is a very good realization, and the beginning of real leadership. Leadership begins with self. Do not forget that I told you before that you are in training for leadership. You are not yet world leaders either in the subjective or objective sense. It is my intent, in cooperation with those who cooperate, to make leaders out of those whose response gives me the opportunity. Self-criticism is destructive and not always of that which needs or requires destruction. If you are endeavoring to take a step forward in causative control, then let it begin here, with your own attitude in regard to yourself. Observe, be not afraid to look upon that within the instrumentality, and in the consciousness, which needs correction. Do not be afraid to seek the next evolutionary step, but let your observation be from a positive focus so that the energy, force, and substance you move from that point of observation will be constructive and directed towards the goal you are seeking to attain. In reference to the thought life, do endeavor to differentiate this from the brain activity. I do not refer now to that brain activity which is constantly moving. I am referring to the body of thought which is the prime mover, the directing agent, to a very great degree, of your life and affairs. For instance, a part of that body of thought, and depending upon your attention to it, would be considered the concepts of the wisdom. Another part of that body of thought was created via your own educational efforts. The body of thought, the energy potential which is the causal factor in this particular sense of your outer life and affairs, is your share of your particular contribution on a causal level to the outer picture within the world of affairs. When you consider your particular position in relationship to the whole of humanity, from this level of cause, consider the major race-mind thought forms which are controlling the emotions and the activity of human beings everywhere in the world at this time. Consider these major thought forms and your particular position to them. Do they contribute to your own thought life, and if so, how much? Note as many of the major race-mind thought forms as you yourself can discover and understand, again, not from a point of meditation, but from a point of mental observation. Now, I would have you pause again and direct your attention to your own power factor of manifestation, your own astral body, that subjective body of force which is the movement of your energy potential into outer manifestation. For instance, what thought forms within the mental body do you give power to? To what do you give the force of manifestation? What is the overall tonal quality of your astral body? Consider, as you endeavor to discover the general tone of your own astral body, that any strong emotion, whether it be positive or negative, will carry the thought behind it into outer activity. As you look for and find your own emotional tone, place yourself in relationship to the overall astral tone and consciousness of humanity. Where are you causal, in the astral sense, to the outer appearance in the outer world of affairs? Next we come to that which gives action, the substantiating activity, which is the directional movement of energy, force, and substance, into outer appearance. The first approach to an understanding of this is to observe, and finally to control, the brain activity. That which you picture in your mind in symbolic form, whether the symbol be a word, or a subjective picture, is the substantiating activity in which you are participating every moment, that which releases the energy, force, and substance into outer appearance. As you breathe, you think. As you think, and I refer to the brain activity now, you breathe. With every breath you are releasing energy, force, and substance into outer appearance. You are substantiating. This is where the subjective moves into objectivity. Consider your own substantiating efforts. What is the major form, and what are the forms that your brain activity takes throughout the day? As you discover this, place yourself, again, insofar as is possible to you, in relationship to humanity. It is my hope, and the intent of your own soul, to bring you in as short a time as is possible to an understanding of energy, force, and substance, in a causal sense, to bring you to an understanding of that directional movement of that energy, force, and substance in the world of affairs which is behind the outer picture, and then to give you the techniques wherein you can begin to throw real weight, in a subjective sense, onto the side of the forces of light, bringing about their ever-increasing control of these factors. Looking at the subjective side, rather than the objective one, it is possible to see those thoughts within the race mind which are being deliberately activated and set into motion by the forces of darkness to produce specific effects within the physical plane of affairs. When this is seen, it is possible for the disciple to offset this activity and to enter into a positive subjective effort to bring through the movement of energy, force, and substance those concepts of the wisdom which directly overshadow humanity today into an influence within the outer world of appearance. This is the activity for which you are being immediately prepared. This is the way in which you will make that beginning into the subjective world of leadership. Chapter 5. The mental body and the brain, the energy of mind. Unlocking your potential. Thinking in the brain. There is a great deal of confusion regarding the differentiation between the mental body and the brain, or the brain activity. Therefore I am going to take this opportunity to endeavor to clarify this subject. At present, for the greatest percentage of you, and I am referring now to all of those who will receive this instruction, whether in this class, via correspondence, or in other ways, your only contact or approach at this particular moment to the mental body is via your attitude. You live and function primarily within the brain. The mental body, take note that I am using this term out of place, in a sense, for it is the mind which reaches you from the mental body, lies behind the brain activity which you would define as your thought life. At this particular time, because this brain activity is not, for the most part, a result of a directional act of the will, it can be compared to a tiny overflow, reaching or moving into the threshold of your present awareness from your subjective thought and emotional life. There is a movement of energy from that mental body into a contact with force which is moving from the astral body. These two movements of energy and force are given substance within the etheric network. They make their impact upon the brain moment by moment in response to that within the outer life and affairs which pulled them into activity. You are then primarily focused within the physical brain, appropriating very little mental energy and very little astral force. You seldom direct energy, force, and substance into appearance by a conscious act of will. Instead, you take on substance as it moves, via the etheric network, into the brain. The important point now is for you to cognize the potential of your equipment. The subjective thought life, the subjective energy potential contained within your mental body, is constituted of all knowledge, whether it be correct and proper knowledge or erroneous, which you have gained throughout the whole of your experience in incarnation in the three planes of human endeavor. Now I am not referring here to every little thought which you have recorded in the brain while you were in incarnation. I am referring to the vast body of knowledge regarding all subjects, regarding all of experience itself, which you have gained while in incarnation. This constitutes your energy potential. This is your mental equipment. Remember, moving from that subjective thought life is the energy of mind. That energy of mind is your approach into an actual beginning of focus within the mental body itself. It is your approach, first, to an understanding of what is contained within the mental body. What is presently active? This energy of mind, which bridges the mental body with the brain itself, via the etheric network, actually appears outwardly or constitutes your particular attitude. It produces within the person, within the appearance, the outer face or attitudes with which you meet your own created experience. You can begin, just begin, to appreciate the energy potential of this aspect of your equipment by realizing just one fact alone. A vast thought form which is contained within your own mental equipment, to the degree in which you have been able to grasp it, is the nature of the soul, and the new thought form of the wisdom itself. Here is a major part of your creative energy potential. Consider again that all of you, regardless of your present circumstance or present position in life, social, economic, educational, regardless of these outer appearances, you have had vast experience in the three worlds of human endeavor. Your mental equipment is rich in concrete knowledge, gained from many, many incarnations within the three planes of human endeavor. Every speck of knowledge which has ever been cognized by you as a consciousness is contained within that mental instrument. The energy potential of every skill you have ever acquired while functioning within any physical instrument is contained within the mental equipment, and could be reproduced in this physical instrument by proper direction of energy, force, and substance. It is the tremendous connotation, the value of your own equipment, that I would bring to your attention now. And it is that potential which we wish to unlock and move into active outer expression in this leadership class. Eventually you appropriate, from out of the mental body, that which is apropos. You direct the energy potential into its manifestation as force, give it substance, and via an act of the will, release this directional movement of energy, force, and substance, via the brain, into outer appearance. The consciousness must first establish contact with his own Devic equipment. Do not forget that your threefold instrument, a contact with the three planes of human endeavor, is Devic in nature. First then, the consciousness focused into outer expression via brain activity, must establish contact with his own Devic equipment. After the initial contact is established, he then cognizes or becomes aware of the content of that equipment. He opens the door to what is contained within it. He opens the door to all of that knowledge which he himself has acquired and stored within this equipment. He then chooses that energy potential which he shall activate, give direction within his outer life and affairs. Your contact with it is being established right now via this instruction. You cognize the movement of energy, that which you think of as mind, from the mental body via the etheric network and, in conjunction with astral force, the brain itself. Only the conscious soul functioning within the brain can unlock the energy and the force potential of the instrumentality. This is for the safety, not only of the individual throughout the evolutionary process prior to conscious soul identification, but for the sake of humanity itself as a whole. Be careful to differentiate between the overshadowing spiritual soul and the equipment itself, because what we are referring to here is the equipment of the soul in incarnation, the mental, the astral, and the etheric equipment. This equipment is subjective to the outer appearance, and yet it is held in potential until such time as the soul in its own evolutionary growth and development has come into a conscious focus within the brain. Then these potentials can be unlocked, can be drawn upon, and they are appropriated and utilized by the men in the brain. Prior to this point, they are acted upon by the overshadowing soul in response to ideated conscious receptivity and the activities of the life and affairs of the men in the brain. Your present attitudes are created by the movement of energy reaching the brain via the etheric network from the mental body as the stored knowledge, correct and erroneous, is given a small directional movement by the overshadowing soul, by the invocative and evocative activity of the consciousness focused within the brain, and by the outer life and affairs. This movement of mental energy, which is the activity of certain thought forms as they impact upon the brain activity, create your attitudes. It is via these attitudes that the first approach is made into an understanding or a comprehension of what is contained and active at the moment within the mental body. This is the energy potential active within the mental body and moving through his equipment into outer appearance. Do not be concerned, at this particular time, about past incarnations. Realize that the body of knowledge gained via past incarnations is contained within the present, active and inactive. While the contents of that body have to be reshaped, reassembled, or reconstructed by the conscious soul incarnate within his instrumentality, this is carried out in such a way as to make transmutation possible without the manifestation of chaos. The subjective equipment is not nearly so much karmic as is the outer appearance of persona forces. It is to a degree, but in a different sense than your particular interpretation of karma. I am not asking you to change attitudes. Do not misunderstand or mistake this instruction, because this is precisely what I do not want you to do. Your attitudes are basically very good, much better than you realize. This is why you are present within a class of this kind. Only observe the attitudes. As you become aware of your major attitudes, I shall give you the techniques whereby you can use this movement of energy as a pathway into the mental body itself, to cognize its content. You will remember that I stated that one of the major thought forms, and one which is active to a certain degree within the mental body, is that of the nature of the soul or this thought form presentation of the wisdom. This has been accomplished largely as a result of the soul-mind-brain alignment. Remember that the mental body is affected by all knowledge gained. All knowledge from moment to moment is stored in the mental body, and you will be given techniques for the reproduction of skills acquired in the past, where those skills are needed in service to the plan. The major goal of this particular class is to make it possible for you to learn to think in the brain, that is, to bring the energy potential within each mental body into a unified, directional movement which can influence the not-so-subjective thought life of the masses. Remember I said the beginnings of this ability. Assignment: focus in the cave and identify as the conscious soul incarnate. Contemplate the fact of the mental body, bringing into your contemplation the following. 1. Its purpose to you as a conscious soul. 2. Its value to you as a conscious soul. 3. Its immediate use, insofar as a creative solution to your present problems are concerned. Utilizing the creative imagination, contemplate that movement of energy, via the pathway of the etheric network in the brain, between the mental body and this Devic life. After such contemplation, endeavor to become aware of your basic attitudes, giving that awareness written form. Summarize the results of this, the whole of this assignment, explaining as briefly as possible the understanding gained by it and bring it to the next class. Do not be concerned with the quantity of writing. Carry out the assignment daily. Do not be concerned with the showing that you will make. This is one of the most important assignments that you will receive. Chapter 6. Subjective and Objective Activity. Daily Cycles and Interludes. Freeing the Imprisoned Consciousness. Planned Service Activity. One of the contributing factors to the problems of both manifestation, in the activity and form sense, and to embodiment within the instrumentality, which the group experiences in a rather persistent way, and I might add with some consistency, is the lack of adequate subjective activity. Except in a very few cases, those disciples who are actively serving within this overall group life have not properly balanced their objective service effort with the subjective service effort. This is due to 1. A lack of comprehension and realization of the importance, the actual necessity, of the subjective effort. 2. A lack of any clear understanding, even with all of the instruction which has been presented, as to how subjective effort is carried out, the process itself, which is necessitated by whatever the planned activity is that needs to be objectified. This holds as true for teachers, for leaders, and for students in their effort to embody the teaching, as it does for the group as a whole or for any particular group unit endeavoring to carry out an objective service activity. For this reason, and because the effort which you are entering into now is of importance to the group as a whole and to the plan which it serves, I wish to clarify the subject in some detail. First, I am going to bring it down to the level of the time spent in subjective activity in relationship to the time spent in objective service activity. I am going to follow the cyclic pattern which is predominant within the present culture and civilization. If your particular time cycles vary, then you may work out the proper relationship according to them, breaking your 24-hour period into 3 cycles of 8 hours. 8 hours given to sleep, which I might add is the usual circumstance, is the required amount of sleep for the disciple who is in training and who is building or rebuilding his body. 8 hours given to the objective service activity, and in this I am including your working day, and 8 hours given to, you might say, miscellaneous activities. For every 3 hours that a disciple is actively engaged in objective service activity, he should spend 1 hour in subjective activity, 1 hour at least. I am referring to the disciple at your particular stage of evolutionary development and cyclic activity within the instrumental rebuilding process. For every 3 hours of objective service activity, then, the disciple at your particular point of development should engage in 1 hour of formal subjective meditation. If then, the cycle of service activity is an 8-hour cycle, 2 of those hours should be spent in subjective meditation, that meditation being upon the planned service activity within which you are engaged. If you have a problem of embodiment, and in this embodiment I include the grasp, the absorption, the precipitation of those concepts which you are learning, if you have a problem in manifesting your planned service activity, in manifesting whatever economy is demanded by that planned service activity, and if you are not balancing your objective service activity according to this cyclic relationship, this subjective meditation which I have given you, then you may look to this first as the cause of many of your difficulties. Regardless of the effort you are putting into your service, if it is not balanced according to this rhythmic activity, you cannot hope to actually render an effective service according to your own conception of that effectiveness. It is far better to regulate the cycles, and of course this is one of the problems that the disciple is faced with in the Western world and in this particular civilization, to utilize the interlude in a rhythmic manner which AC counts for the whole of the cycle. That is, 1 hour of subjective work, 3 hours of activity, another hour of subjective work, another 3 hours of objective work. This is the most ideal way, but it is necessary for the disciple functioning in this particular time and place to make those adjustments which are demanded by his outer life and affairs. Therefore, establish your cyclic activities in the best way possible, but balance that objective activity with the proper amount of subjective activity. Every outer action in which you are engaged should be considered, and therefore appropriated, as a part of your service activity. This would necessitate the same cycle of subjective activity as would any other day. Formal meditation means sitting in meditation, and I am going to clarify the subject of subjective activity so that you will know the process itself, carrying out whatever meditative steps that are necessitated by the objective service activity. No matter how consciously incarnate as the soul you are, there will always be the necessity to enter into the subjective interlude during which the entire attention is turned upward, during which the entire attention in that cycle of the meditation is turned inward, and during which the entire attention in that part of the meditative cycle is turned subjectively outward. The time will come, but do not anyone misunderstand my meaning here to indicate that you are at that point now or will be for a long time to come, when your sense of focus and your contact within the one life is such that the interludes can be shortened, and when much of the subjective activity can be carried out during the outer activity. But this is not true at this point. This does not mean that you should not make every effort to carry your meditation, to carry its tone and its continuity into the outer objective life and affairs. But regardless of how proficient you become in that dual focus and dual activity, do not at this point or at any time in the near future, forsake the time spent in the formal subjective meditation. For this is your time actually of magical activity. This is the time when you can and do function as soul completely in control of the personality energy, force, and substance. And in the degree that you are able to carry out this activity, will be the degree of your success as a disciple serving within the body of humanity. This necessitates discipline. So long as any part of the instrumentality, any part of the persona-identified consciousness rebels against, objects or opposes this particular effort, there will be all sorts of manifestations of opposition which will tend to make it impossible for you to find the time or the place of quiet. First, you have to come to the realization of the importance of subjective activity. You have to come to the love of that activity. This is in truth the life of the soul, and then the will to manifest this cyclic activity. When you do this with the purpose, the love, and the will to do it, when you follow this with the outer effort to carry it through, then you will begin to manifest outwardly the time and place. But you cannot wait for this manifestation. It is necessary to take action. If you will follow a clearly formulated process that does not scatter your energies in any way, you will be able to focus more into the subjective effort during the 1 hour than you would in 2 or 3. I would have you consider, all of you, the effort which you are making from a different perspective. This new perspective may bring in a greater purpose and a greater love and a greater will to do than you have experienced heretofore. From an identified soul focus within the Ashramic group life itself, stop for a few minutes and consider the effort you are making not only from the Ashramic perspective, but from the perspective of the entire oversoul of humanity. The consciousness incarnate within the 3 worlds of human endeavor is imprisoned within what constitutes a powerful and vast form nature. That incarnate consciousness, do not forget, is a part of the consciousness of the oversoul. To the degree that the oversoul is incarnate, it is imprisoned within the form nature, though not perhaps identified with it. But even in the overshadowing you are imprisoned, limited to that form nature which holds, almost within that aspect of the consciousness which is incarnate. What is the tremendous effort that is being made, the tremendous struggle taking place within this particular life and affairs, the oversoul itself, and from within every Ashramic group life? It is to free the imprisoned consciousness from the tremendous chains which hold it immobile, insensitive, and to a tremendous degree, unconscious. What are you experiencing, then, as you endeavor to serve that effort to free the imprisoned consciousness? As you meet with opposition within your own form nature, you are experiencing your particular share of the burden which is carried within the totality of the soul life of humanity. And to the degree that you are able to free your own incarnate and imprisoned consciousness, and to command the energy, force, and substance of the prison to serve, to free the consciousness of those with whom you are related in the three worlds. To this degree you are truly aiding the effort of the Oversoul, of the Christ, of all those who are related with the effort to free the imprisoned consciousness of this planet. This is nothing more than your particular share of service. What does it take? It takes the disciplinary action of the consciousness not only in the face of that opposition, but within the strength and the power of it. If there is violence in the life of the disciple, in the occult sense, it is here that it can be found. Consider the actual technical process that the formal subjective meditation should follow. First, establish the stability and the alignment of the lower three bodies, using whatever steps are necessary according to the individual. Next, as in all advanced meditation techniques, the consciousness is focused in the cave and identified as the conscious soul incarnate. Now, what exactly does this mean? All too often, individually and collectively, the group hurries over this step, failing to actually establish, within whatever time cycle is given to this effort, a true soul identification and focus. All too often the words are simply repeated. Usually an abortive attempt is made to focus somewhere in the middle of the head. Very, very seldom, in most instances, is there any realization of an actual soul focus in the cave, of an actual identification as the conscious soul incarnate within not only the instrumentality itself, but within the body of humanity. Therefore, in order to eliminate the tendency toward empty ritual at this point, as you endeavor to establish this soul-identified consciousness within the cave, take the time to contemplate the function of the soul within the body of humanity. Carry this contemplation until such time as your awareness enters into the reality of the identification and the function itself. Now as you proceed, instead of the routine, giving a certain amount of time to this and then proceeding as if it had been established, do not proceed until you do achieve that awareness of reality as the conscious soul incarnate. If it takes the entire hour of subjective meditation, then establish this insofar as possible within that hour. The next time you enter into an hour that you have set aside for subjective meditation, do the same thing. And carry this out for howsoever many hours, days, weeks, months, or years it takes to achieve an awareness of this reality. Remember, you will not achieve that sense of reality through a repetitious sounding of words, whether that sounding is an inaudible one or an audible one. It will come as you contemplate the function of the conscious soul incarnate within the body of humanity. You may take as a beginning of that contemplation, if you wish, the concepts which are projected to you with this instruction. After having carried this step to its successful conclusion, establish your higher alignment via the head center with your own place and function within the Ashramic group life. As you establish this alignment, contemplate the fact in nature of your overshadowing soul in its proper place and function within the Ashramic group life. As you contemplate this, permit whatever of your own awareness is attracted to be attracted up into that focus. I do not expect or require this particular group at this point to achieve a great sense of reality in this step. Try, via the use of the creative imagination, to be attracted upward into a tentative focus and then, after having grasped even a tiny sense of being focused within the ashram, proceed as if you were, in the following manner. First, endeavor to stabilize that focus by establishing a higher alignment, from this overshadowing focus within the ashram, with the ashramic point, its center. Identify that focal point as the focused purpose of the ashram. Then endeavor to sense, to perceive, to become aware of the ashramic group life within which you as a spiritual soul have residence. Reach out via the etheric network of that ashram and touch with love your brothers with whom you are related in the ashramic sense, taking care not to limit this perception to just those with whom you are related in the physical plane of appearances. Endeavor to get a grasp of the ashramic group life on its own plane. Then realize that the ashramic group life is in meditation, contemplating the purpose and the plan of the ashram itself. Endeavor to enter into that unified meditation. Endeavor to tune into the contemplation and the ideation taking place upon this particular level by the ashramic group life as a one life. In the beginning, focus your attention upon ashramic purpose and plan, being receptive to impression which is created by the meditative effort of the ashramic group life. The goal of this particular part of the meditation is to sense, to perceive whatsoever you possibly can of the reality of the Ashramic purpose and plan and hence of the Ashramic group life. In the beginning, I do not expect you to do anything more than to simply touch it, to tune into it, if only for an instant. Once you have achieved this necessary flash of perception, refocus your attention downward as the overshadowing soul. Move down that line of light which is your consciousness thread into the cave in the center of your head, perceiving the focused light there, and precipitating into that focused light the light, love, and power of the Ashramic group life. Then follow the consciousness thread down into the cave, coming as it were into incarnation as the conscious soul within the instrumentality, and there begin to meditate upon your planned service activity. If as yet that planned service activity is not formulated, then formulate it, realizing before and after the meditation effort, that at this particular point in your evolutionary process, part of what you formulate, part of what you perceive will be correct, much of it will be incorrect or erroneous, and a certain amount of it will be mixed. But do, at this point in the meditative effort, whatever you are able to do insofar as the formulation of your planned service activity is concerned. Take into consideration every aspect of the activity itself, keeping in mind always the purpose and goal of that activity. When you have achieved all that is possible insofar as the formulation is concerned during this particular cycle, then focus that plan, that thought form, via the Ajna center, out into the three worlds of human endeavor to manifest in divine law and order, realizing that which is incorrect or erroneous will not be permitted to manifest because of your very invocation of divine law and order, and accept this fact. Then contemplate that which your planned service activity requires in a material sense. What are the needs that are created by this planned service activity? Formulate the demand for their manifestation via 1. First a comprehension of the true needs and their visualization, and then 2. A willingness to incarnate as the conscious soul within the appearance of this particular form. Carry this through as completely as possible and then sound the note via the throat center, directing the thought form to manifest in divine law and order, accepting the lack of manifestation of any form which you have created which is not in harmony with the plan you serve. Then open the eyes and become consciously aware of the breath. As the conscious soul incarnate, look into your world of appearance, sound the note and let this be your normal focus. Proceed then on this plane with your objective service activity. As you endeavor to carry out your individual subjective efforts according to this instruction, you may find that there is some difficulty in relating your particular effort with it. If there is a need for further instruction or further help in order to carry this out, request help. It is most important that you learn to function in this way. I have one further suggestion. Keep a written record of the effort and maintain silence regarding it except in those cases where you are working closely with co-disciples who have need of your realizations, etc. Do not scatter or disperse or waste the strength of your effort in discussion. If you wish to keep a meditation record of this effort for a full lunar month, beginning with the new moon, you may hand this to your teacher for discussion and evaluation. Chapter 7. Group Centers. Head, Throat, and Heart. Esoteric Centers and Exoteric Activities. Group Instability. Prepare for meditation, please. Focus the consciousness in the cave and identify as the conscious soul. Integrate the substantial forces of the threefold instrument into a service unit which is responsive to divine plan impress. Link up with one another to form a center of blue-white Christ light, aligned with and functioning, at this moment, within the head center group in the Rocky Mountain area, so that the two group units together create a center of blue-white Christ light focused into the etheric network of the overall group life. Establish a vertical alignment with the Ashramic group and the overshadowing Christ. Via the Ajna center with the consciousness of the overall group life, and via the throat center focused in the Pacific Northwest align with the substantial forces of the overall group life. Functioning within the head center of the overall group life, bring divine purpose into focus. Bring it into focus within the blue-white sphere of light. From this focus, align with, via visualization and recognition, the throat center triangle in alignment with the Christ. Visualize a line of light reaching out from the blue-white sphere which is focused into the Rocky Mountain area, to a lavender sphere from the throat center triangle at its point. Create between these two poles an etheric line of light. Now, while visualizing the line of light and while seeing it, connect with the throat center triangle and sphere. While looking along that line of light, and recognizing the throat center of the overall group life, contemplate the divine purpose which motivates the building of the life, the divine purpose which is served by all ashrams functioning under the Christ, that divine purpose being the evolution of human consciousness into its spiritual counterpart. Visualize this motivating impulse moving from the head center focus, through the line of light created into the lavender sphere which is the throat center, and finally into its triangular nucleus, its center. Visualize now the response of that center adding to the divine purpose, the divine motivation, creating ordered activity in the group life. Visualize an interplay between these two centers, an interplay of divine purpose and ordered activity, creating between them, via the interplay between these two poles, a magnetic field, a field which magnetizes with purpose and order all energy, force, and substance that comes within its sphere of influence. Now visualize a point to the right of these two centers, a golden point of light within a sphere of golden energy, the heart center of the overall group life, within the Southern California area. Visualize its alignment with the head center and to the throat center via etheric lines of light. Visualize its inhalation and its exhalation of divine love, its rhythmic breath, and via that breath its qualification of the magnetic field and all that lies in between, with divine love wisdom. Now visualize the grand triangle itself within a larger sphere, within which are blended the energies of divine purpose, divine order, and divine love. Now visualize just a touch of the atomic red light of the first ray, just a touch of the blue of the second and of the lavender of the seventh, blended perfectly within the larger sphere. Now visualize the larger sphere as a center within the body of humanity through which the wisdom is first made available to all members of the human family, is brought to bear upon their lives and affairs, and carries the influence of the divine plan of humanity into the world of affairs. Sound the Aum. Group centers. It has been most difficult to bring into the group consciousness and mind, and I refer to the overall group, rather than to any particular group unit, the understanding of the center functions and the resulting activity of those functions. It is possible, as a result of this meditation, to bring a little more clarity here. Go back in memory to the meditation, at that point in the creative process where the centers are being aligned, and via that alignment, creating a magnetic field. Consider now the centers as esoteric foci of energy. Consider the magnetic field as the body within which the energies brought into focus by these centers are expressed. Expand thereby your concept of the center system, which has been blocking you in all attempts that you have made to manifest your outer service activity as an overall group life. These centers, within themselves, are esoteric. Their exoteric activities manifest within the magnetic field in all parts of that magnetic field. Each center is everywhere equally present. In other words, it is the function of the esoteric center to bring the energy for which it is responsible into focus from its higher source and to make it available, via its center relationship within the triangle, to the overall group life, through the magnetic field created by these centers. While each center has its esoteric focus, it is everywhere equally present in the exoteric sense. I am going to ask you to consider this, take it into meditation and contemplation, in order to remove from within your brain consciousness certain blocks, which have been proving very much as major obstacles at this time. Thus, the difference between the exoteric and the esoteric functions of the center is the fact that esoterically the center is a foci of energy, while exoterically it is everywhere equally present. This is true of each of the centers. It is the magnetic field which is the body through which these energies are carried and expressed in the outer world of affairs. In this sense, there is a perfect and complete synthesis of the energies and the intents brought into focus by these centers. So that head center, heart center, and throat center activity and energy are being expressed throughout the whole of the magnetic field within which the magnetic parts of the group life are held, in right relationship, to form a total entity. Do not be afraid to enter into any specific activity, because this is a throat center activity or this is a head center activity. Appropriate whatever energy is needed at any area at any time and wield that energy. Wield that intent. The body could not function, could not exist, were it not for the synthesis which makes up its total. As you carry out this meditation in cooperation with the head center group unit, with the throat center, and the heart center, this invokes the needed energies and intents from their higher sources into the magnetic field of the overall group life. See the activity aspect, the love-wisdom aspect, the power aspect, and the order aspect, each with their appropriate energies available everywhere within the magnetic field, everywhere within the body of humanity where the group life is functioning. Meditation upon this, by all of those who receive this instruction, should clarify a point which has been a real problem. I would suggest that this and the following meditations be made available to heart center personnel as well, for it will be easier for them to cooperate with the effort of the head and throat centers if they have this instruction. Giving it a great deal of attention will help to add to the invocative power of both the magnetic field and the centers themselves. Instability. As you may or may not have intuited and recorded, there has been since the activity of this class a great deal of instability within it. Much movement in and out of students. All of which has necessitated, upon my part, a reorganization of program. Now, please do not misinterpret this to mean that this has been a failure or anything of that kind within the class. You understand that leadership training, as such, is being initiated at this time via this group and all of those who are receiving this instruction. In the initiation of anything of that kind, there are certain factors which have to be worked out. The membership of the class, in the beginning, was unable to adjust to and properly balance the impact of predominant first ray, which was brought to bear upon it. When that correction was made, the energies shifted from first ray to seventh, and the same thing occurred within the instrumentality of the group unit, making it necessary for me to withdraw the energy, in part at least, and to withhold planned instruction. Now it is a part of the plan, insofar as the overall group life is concerned and therefore my intent, to initiate and to work out leadership training during this period of time. It is, however, necessary to accommodate the plan, as it comes into activity, to the conditions which are prevailing. Therefore, I am going to proceed not only with a reorganization of the training program itself, but with a reorganization of membership as well. The class will be open to new students during the full moon period. It will not be confined to those who have or are taking teacher training. It will be open to all nature of the soul graduates who pass certain requirements in a personal interview with the teacher. The training program, which will be initiated at that time, will constitute the following, and I suggest that this information be made available to those who might be interested in this type of training. First, we will proceed with practical leadership techniques in teamwork. That is, training teams to spearhead the wisdom movement via experimental activity within this area which can be carried out after graduation and qualifications in other areas. Now definite teams will be set up within this area. Training will consist of instruction followed by assignments which have to do with actual leadership activity in the area itself, leadership insofar as the carrying of the wisdom into the body of humanity is concerned, insofar as spearheading the movement is concerned. This is a reorganization. It had not been intended to train teams at this particular time. However, due to the effect within the instrumentality of the class and of the entire group, created by the impact of the energies which are brought into focus by the group as a result of instruction, it is going to be necessary to combine the instruction projected with actual practical experience within the field in order to properly adjust and balance these energies. It will be most definitely a part of the leadership training program. As far as the esoteric leadership training is concerned, this will be given to the class membership in what might be called units. Those who are ready for, and might be able to handle this kind of energy, will receive this particular kind of instruction. Secondly, the training will, instead of placing the emphasis upon esoteric leadership, as had been attempted, during the past month of the class, emphasize all levels of leadership. Actually, in the beginning, the emphasis will be upon the more exoteric, or intelligent activity, to make it possible to properly balance within the group the higher energies brought to bear upon the group by the instructions that you have been receiving. It will depend entirely upon the size of the group, but it is hoped to establish at least 2 teams and preferably 3. The teams will be no larger than 7 and no smaller than 3. They will be trained via instruction in practical experience to carry out the necessary jobs required by the effort you are making. It will be in administration largely. They will be trained to carry the wisdom into the body of humanity. Their work will be focused into this area. Of course, their training, the fact that it is focused within the area, is incidental. They are not being trained particularly for action in this area. They will be trained to function as teams, as spearheading teams. They will be trained in every phase from the ground up, you might say, in all levels of leadership activity. By leadership I am not referring to government, specifically. I am referring to the activity of carrying the wisdom into the body of humanity. They will be trained in all phases and levels of this, according to their own ray energy, their potential service, and their particular point of development. Each team will consist of a balance or a synthesis of the energies. Chapter 8. The group consciousness, forming an intent, the opportunity to serve, wielding divine purpose. Prepare for meditation, please. Focus the consciousness in the cave and identify as the soul. Integrate the substantial forces of the threefold instrument into a service unit that is responsive to the divine plan. Impress. Link up with one another to form a center of spiritual soul consciousness focused into the etheric network of the overall group life. As a center of spiritual soul consciousness, align the overshadowing divine purpose with the economy, the energy, force, and substance of the overall group life. Recognize the interplay as a created magnetic field between these 2 poles within which the incarnate consciousness of the group becomes the conscious world server, serving the divine plan for humanity, wherever he is, with what he has, to the best of his ability. Into this activity, direct the energy of divine love, giving the qualities of beauty and of harmony to the serving disciple functioning within the magnetic field created by the overshadowing divine purpose and the economy of the group life. Om. This meditation should hold great significance for you. Go back over and study that meditation. I should like to remind you, and this might be something that some of you have not thought of before, that a meditation can be used with great benefit as study material as well as a meditation exercise. The concept is one which directly overshadows the overall group life and which is being projected into the incarnate consciousness of the group in several different ways. 1. Via the teacher training activity, which is going forward. Those of you that are in teacher training, when you study this meditation, will recognize the same note that is being sounded in the present training regarding the internalization process. 2. Via this class, the concept is being projected within the overall group. 3. Via also the meditation on economy, which the group agreed to work on. There is a new connotation in the concept as it was projected in this meditation, and it is this that I would have you think about. We have stated previously that it is the alignment between the divine purpose and the economy of the group life which produces the development of the service potential both inwardly and outwardly into recognizable activity. Now consider again for a moment the fact that it is your energy, force, and substance, your mental energy, your astral force and etheric substance, which is your basic economy. According to your use of this economy will your outer life and affairs manifest. What is it that lies in the magnetic field between the overshadowing divine purpose, you might say the group monad, and these substantial forces, this energy, force, and substance which is the economy of the group life? What is it that lies between these 2 poles within this magnetic field created by the interplay between these 2? It is the group consciousness, your consciousness, when you have so perfectly aligned these via your focused intent, your focused will to serve. And what is a focused intent? Insofar as you are concerned, it is that intent which you are capable of forming in your brain, and of holding in the face of all other attractions or distractions. Via your focused intent to serve the divine plan for humanity, you align the economy of your own instrument and in relationship to the group life, whatever that relationship might be, with the overshadowing divine purpose. Your consciousness and that of your group brothers is served. Its evolution, its growth and development, is served by that alignment, by that relationship between divine purpose and the economy of the instrument, for this is what lies between these two poles. Your consciousness is evolved by that continuing interplay into that of the world server. You serve because this becomes your nature. Your capacities are increased, your potential develops, your opportunity to serve according to your capacity, according to your potential, is placed before you. This is the direct result of the alignment focused in your brain, whether you are focused as a personality or not, within the confusion, within the strength of your limitations, that focused intent establishes and maintains this alignment. This is the way you appropriate and wield divine purpose and power, at your stage of development, regardless of the outward appearance manifesting within the group life and affairs, regardless of the conflicts between personalities, regardless of the apparent movement of some out of the group life, and the entrance of new members into that group life. Regardless of all appearances, at no time in the past has the opportunity for the development of the group service potential been as good as it is now. I include in this the consciousness of many who are not known members of the group in this particular time and place. The alignment between the monadic center of the group with overshadowing divine purpose and the substantial forces of the economy of the group life is stronger than it has ever been in any time in the past. Take the opportunity which is presented by meditating upon this concept. Come to understand the significance of the full focused will to serve, the ability of the brain itself to stand, to align the energy, force, and substance of your own bodies with divine purpose. Grasp and understand it, the tremendous significance of this act, and then give it all that you possibly can. For the combined efforts of all those disciples, few though they may appear to be, serving with this thought-form presentation of the wisdom, serving in this time and place, to establish this and maintain that alignment in the face of all obstacles, personal and otherwise, will swing the group as a whole into a new rhythm of growth and active service. Chapter 9. A New Order of Devas, Circulation and Precipitation, Group Command. Agents of Magical Action. The projection of this instruction sets into motion a new responsibility for the group as a whole and for every individual who is functioning within the group life. I am going to ask you to recall to mind that part of the general group meditation which has to do with the circulation, between the three major centers, of spiritual purpose, divine love wisdom, and spiritual light. Each center unit focuses that energy with which he is specifically aligned. The head center bringing into focus spiritual purpose. The heart center divine love wisdom, or spiritual quality, and the throat center spiritual light. These three energies are circulated to create that perfect synthesis which becomes the precipitating agent of the divine plan for humanity in specific relationship to that which is presently manifesting in any time or place. I would have you consider what you are doing in this particular operation. As these energies, 1, 2, and 7, are circulated through the great triangle of centers within the etheric body of the overall group life, the conscious soul incarnate, functioning within these centers, is creating, literally creating, a new order of Devas. These Devas, being constituted or constructed out of a blend of energies which is actually a synthesis of 1, 2, and 7, and there is a vast difference between a synthesis of energies and a blend or combination of energies, and I would have you consider this. For instance, in the instrumentality of the disciple, his bodies function on different rays. The sum total constitutes a combination of energies and therefore a group of Devic lives. But this new order of Devas is not a combination of 1, 2, and 7, it is a synthesis of 1, 2, and 7. Meaning that an entirely new note, a new tone, is created and sounded within the etheric network of the group life. Grasp this concept, because this is a responsibility of the incarnate group. These Devas are not created on Ashramic levels, they are not created by the Ashramic center or the Ashramic group, they are created by the conscious soul incarnate. That is, by the group life which is functioning within the three worlds of human endeavor. Therefore, this is a part of the function of the group, particularly of the centers. It is a major responsibility of the group as a total, of each center within it so far as his part or his center function is concerned in relationship to the group function. It is a responsibility of every individual taking part in the effort. It is most difficult to enlighten and illumine your consciousness regarding this new order of Devas at this particular time, because they are definitely new. There is not a word in your language other than the word synthesis, and synthesis is not adequate, which will convey the meaning underlying these new Devas, which will convey their function properly. Therefore, it is partly up to the group to sense, to receive, and to respond in meditation to the esoteric, overshadowing reality which is causal to your creation of these new Devas, in order to arrive at an understanding of their function. Because as you proceed throughout the next 2500-year period to fulfill the initiatory effort being made now, it will be largely through a cooperative activity with these Devas. Therefore, consider, contemplate, become receptive to the essential reality underlying the concept of synthesis, not a combination, but a synthesis, of 1, 2, and 7. Also, as you carry out the general group meditation at the point where you circulate these energies through the triangle to create that synthesis, become consciously aware of the Devas which are being constructed by your efforts. Become consciously aware of these Devas, who are etheric in frequency, as being created and called into readiness, that are awaiting the group's command. I would have you realize that the Devas will respond only to group command. Therefore, any individual who evolves into a cooperative relationship with the Devas will have to function from within the group consciousness, will have to wield group purpose and plan, will have to embody the group quality, before he will be able to work with this new order of Devas. Consider also that they are the precipitating agent of the divine plan for humanity within the specific situation or circumstance in manifestation. These Devas, created to serve this particular group consciousness, will be those Devas through which most of the magic that the group enters into will be carried out. These are a section of the unseen workers who work with any group, the only difference being that these Devas are a new order being created by this group focus. They have specific relationship to the divine plan in its wisdom application. They are the precipitating agents of the divine plan in its wisdom application within the given circumstance or happening. They will become the link between the conscious soul incarnate focused within the instrument and the outer manifestation of his purpose and his plan. This new order of Devas will carry through a dynamic action, or attention to the plan, grasped and formulated by the conscious soul incarnate into specific manifest relationships within the world of affairs. They are precipitating agents, dynamic and carrying the plan in its wisdom application. You understand, this is something entirely new insofar as its magic is concerned. Many orders of Devas have been created down through the ages to carry magical effort initiated by the soul within its own particular focus into outer manifestation. These Devas operate in what I can only refer to for your better understanding, in one of the lower octaves of ceremony. The new Devas will carry the plan into manifestation via its wisdom application rather than the old ceremonial application. These Devas will precipitate into objective manifestation. For this particular time and place, for this age, they are that part of the equation which has to do with the matter aspect. The group must proceed with a great deal of caution, because these Devas are definitely the agents of magical action dynamic. They will carry the wisdom contained within the consciousness into objective manifestation. The brain consciousness will not always know how such and such came about, but that consciousness can know that it is a direct result of the action of these Devas. This is a part of the organization of the group economy and a utilization in a right organization of the potentials of the economy of the group itself. Recognize that the circulation of energies creates them. Endeavor to perceive, become aware, sensitive to the fact of their presence within the etheric environment of the group life and to the fact of their standing in readiness awaiting group command. Do not endeavor to give any commands to these Devas at this time. Later, as the group proceeds and a relationship is established, you will receive a technique with which to work. Therefore, do not attempt to utilize or to command these devas at this time, only to become aware of them and to understand the essential reality which is causal to the formation of these devas. That is to sense, to receive the impression of that reality which cannot in your language at present be formulated into a proper word form. Chapter 10. Life Training. Moving Energy, Force, and Substance. Consider the world of affairs and the major problems of humanity. You will remember that I discussed with you the fact that you are in training, during this incarnation, for world leadership, in the objective sense, in a future incarnation. This training, being initiated now, will continue throughout the rest of this incarnation for those of you whose response to the initiatory training is such as to warrant this continuity. I should like to discuss with you in part the form that this major life training will take. As you prepare yourselves to enter into the arena of world affairs, to move into objective leadership, you must have first proven yourself to be a leader in the subjective realm. That is, you must have brought to bear upon the life and affairs of humanity an influence which subjectively created outward changes in the affairs of your time. You must have moved sufficient energy, force, and substance to have helped solve one or more of the major problems of humanity, and according to the degree of your subjective influence will be your movement into objective leadership in the future. The leader in the world of affairs knows what constitutes those affairs. He knows, every moment of the day or night, what is taking place throughout the world. Actually, the world of affairs is his environment, and he knows that environment better than you know your own today. This is as true of the subjective leader as it is of the objective one. Therefore, it would be wisdom for potential leaders to become acquainted with what is happening in the outer world of appearances, to build into your instrumentality the need to know, the need to observe, the need to enter into that which is taking place in the outer world of affairs. Do not confine this interest to that of any particular department of human living, any particular country or nation, or any particular problem. Learn to see the field of relationships, that field which includes all of the activity taking place within the arena of world affairs at any given time. I would suggest that you begin by establishing the habit, as a part of your service activity, of reading those publications which will give you as clear as possible a picture of what is taking place, learning to take the most from them in as short a time as possible, and turning your thoughts for at least 15 minutes a day to the consideration of the solution of one or more major problems of humanity, realizing as you do so that you are aligning with the forces of light working throughout the planet. Chapter 11. The function of the leader. Inspire a following. Cooperative leadership, a united effort. The divine purpose of the soul. It is the function of the leader to be inspired by the world of ideas, the world of meaning, and in turn to inspire a following whose attention is fixed upon the ideas and the world of meaning rather than the personality of the leader. The leaders can render a major service to the overall group life if they will endeavor to enter into this function of leadership, to utilize the opportunity presented, to bring into the physical brain consciousness those major ideas within the world of meaning which have specific relationship to the growth and development of the group as a whole, as well as to its service activity in this time and place. Each of those leaders should approach his function from this perspective, making every effort to be receptive to those ideas and meanings which overshadow and with which he is specifically related as a disciple, formulating these ideas, concepts, or meanings, into a presentation which he will give as his major contribution to his group. Then, after all such ideas and concepts, all such meanings, have been presented, they should be taken into meditation by the group as a total. They should be discussed only after that meditation, and only in relationship to how they can best be put into outer manifestation. They should be related to the growth and development of the overall group as well as to its service activity, and should present no necessity for argument or wrong relationships within the group. Thus the leaders can serve to bring into activity the concept of cooperative leadership where there is a give and take of inspiration, where there is a united effort on the part of all leaders to so relate their particular ideas, concepts, and meanings to those of the total to make whatever adjustments, for the purpose of right relationship, of ideas, concepts, and meanings that are necessary, thus producing an outer group activity which is so coordinated in its many parts as to result in an effective total influence. Let each member cooperate with his brothers to the best of his ability. Insofar as each individual contribution is concerned, I would like to leave you as a leader with one major concept. This has relationship to divine purpose, to spiritual individuality, to specific function. Every member of the human family, regardless of his evolutionary development, regardless of his place in the scheme of things, and therefore every member of the overall group life, has a specific function to perform within the one life. Each one is an individual, that is, he is within his highest aspect an essential part of the one life, indivisible, individual. In that relationship within the one life, each has a specific function to perform, a specific part to play. That is his divine purpose. It is reflected within each aspect of the total divine being. It is reflected within the overshadowing spiritual soul within the ashram. That purpose gives the soul its relationship, its function, within the ashram. That purpose is reflected within the conscious soul incarnate in the brain, and likewise, it is reflected within the threefold persona within the outward appearance. The totality of that divine being is focused into activity upon each of these planes as a result of this divine purpose, which is his specific individual relationship within the one life. Only he can make his contribution, no one else. Only he can serve his specific purpose, his particular relationship within the one life, no one else. It is this purpose which sends him forth into incarnation, into the evolutionary process, which carries him through the path of evolution into the final perfection and completion of his particular purpose and function. Now certainly, he interprets his divine purpose differently within the different levels of his being, and according to his evolutionary development or his state of consciousness at any given moment. But always that interpretation has some relationship because it is a reflection of his divine purpose. It may be oppositional, but in its very opposition it can be understood. It is this purpose which motivates all of his individual experience both as a soul and as a man. Each of you has come to that time in your spiritual growth and development where you can begin to make a more conscious relationship with this, your divine purpose, first by realizing and endeavoring to comprehend the fullness of the meaning that you have a particular, a special, an individual contribution to make to the total expression of the one life within which you live, move, and have your being, that this contribution relates you with others. Each also has his particular, his special function and contribution. Your importance, or the importance of anyone else, is only according to that relationship and contribution. You can utilize this knowledge as a technique. Visualize your alignment, from within your own brain consciousness, upward into and through your overshadowing soul, and from there to that central spot, that essential individual divine being which you are, in your highest aspect. Through this alignment constantly invoke the growth and development of your particular contribution, in right relationship with your incarnate consciousness, your instrumentality, and the time and place within which you live. I strongly urge each of you to take this instruction in all seriousness and to apply it. Let your function be a part of the contribution which is yours to make within the one life, a conscious part of that contribution. Let your presentation be motivated, and therefore formulated, from that higher divine purpose which is the string or thread of connectivity throughout your total being. Chapter 12. Perfect Democracy. Your place and function. Assuming responsibility. Pulling together a point was brought out by one of the group which was accurate. There is a confusion or a general lack of understanding within the minds of many regarding their own function. This could be clarified by the light which pours down from each soul, if each would so align himself with it that he can isolate, in a sense, himself from the outer impacts of a horizontal nature and so receive the knowledge within the soul of right place and function. There are several things which should be taken into consideration as this is done which have to do with cooperative leadership. Cooperative leadership is, in a sense, or results in, the perfect democracy. There is first the ability to be inspired, which is followed by the ability to inspire. This is a prime requisite insofar as cooperative leadership is concerned, and one should realize that the major energy, the primary energy of the leader is that of inspiration. But this should not create within the concrete mind awareness, the lower consciousness, a misinterpretation as to responsibility. For while the leader is not a dictator as such, he must nonetheless assume the responsibility of his function. Cooperative leadership is actually that cooperation between those leaders who have recognized one another's function and place and give, then, to one another, as well as take, the responsibility to carry out each's function. I can give you an example of this. Every member of the hierarchy, regardless of his degree or his particular grade, so to speak, has a particular area of responsibility which he has assumed because it is his natural response to do so. He is fitted for this particular area of responsibility. And those who are working in a cooperative relationship with him accept him in this position. They accept his response and his responsibility in that particular field. A specific instance of this can be stated here for further clarification. The Master DK has within the hierarchy a specific area of responsibility, which is his because of his own innate response to it. He is recognized by every member of the hierarchy as being, in a sense, the authority insofar as this field of responsibility is concerned. He is the youngest member of the hierarchy, and yet the oldest would go to him and seek his advice in that particular field in which he has both assumed and been given the responsibility of service. I would have you ponder upon this, because there is not the willingness, whether you recognize it or not, within the group, either to assume or to give responsibility to one another. Cooperative leadership works out a network of individuals who, by their response to certain functions, certain fields of activity and knowledge, wisdom, have assumed responsibility in this area, a perfect sharing of the burden of manifesting the divine plan for humanity. While the hierarchy has worked these factors out to perfection insofar as humanity is concerned, you will note that within the hierarchy there is a system, there are grades and degrees, and they are cognized by every member of the hierarchy. In addition to these grades and degrees, there are areas of responsibility which are recognized by every member of the hierarchy. Every member of the hierarchy is a follower, and he recognizes those to whom he can turn in order to be inspired, as well as those to whom he can give inspiration. He recognizes also the area from which inspiration moves and flows through the hierarchy like a lubricant which makes it function perfectly. It is this understanding, in part at least, to which you have to come. Each has to become acquainted with his own soul. Each has to arrive at some sense of direction insofar as function is concerned, his own soul direction, and then, as he makes a response to that function, he has to assume the responsibility of it. And, as he assumes the responsibility of it and pours into the group this inspiration of it, then it is the duty and the obligation of the other members of the group to give him his position of leadership in his place and function, in his field of activity, and to cooperate willingly and gladly with him. This may not be too easy to do, but is anything ever easy that is new, that is a revelation of the persona itself or within the persona? I mean a revolution which throws out an old system, and I am referring now to the individual. Remember, according to the response so is the responsibility. Inspiration is the energy which not only achieves recognition and therefore cooperation of one's place and function, but it is also the energy which does not allow power struggles. As I look at you, I see you perfectly capable of achieving this goal individually and collectively. There is no reason whatever why you should not. I will make myself available to you to help you, to aid you, to guide you in leadership training any way that I can toward the achievement of this goal. Not any other one, but this one. I will then join in the effort with you, pull with you, twice, 3 times as much, 7 times as much as you pull. It is up to you, each one and all together. Chapter 13. The Disciple and Economy. Potential and Actual Economy. The Evolution of Economy. Appropriate every activity. I am going to attempt to project a concept from the disciple and economy, one which you will later have the opportunity to study in a more detailed manner, to absorb and embody. At this time we shall make an approach to it in order to expand the group consciousness from a materialistic concept of economy to what I might call a greater spiritual understanding of it. You have heard it repeated over and over that an economy is an organization of the energy, force, and substance of a one life into that activity which will manifest the purpose and plan of the one life. Now, taken from there, an economy is created. It consists first of that which is potential, next, of that which is actual, and next, of the relationship or movement between that which is potential and that which is actual or objective. It is the relationship of these, the movement which produces the constant growth or evolution of the economy of any one life, whether it be an individual, a group, a kingdom in nature, etc. For instance, let us take the disciple within a particular group. The actual economy of that which is in manifestation consists of the energy, force, and substance of his mental energy, his astral force, his etheric substance and those forms into which that energy, force, and substance have been molded. This would mean the instrumentality plus the environment and everything within the environment, including time and space. This constitutes the disciple's actual or objective economy. What is his potential economy? It is the plan which overshadows him. It is the energies and the concepts which have gone into the making of that plan within the Ashramic life and affairs. This is his potential economy. The relationship between these two, the movement between them, results, when they are properly related, in forms, the constant evolution of his economy, producing the ever more perfect form of his manifestation. This produces the evolution of the form itself to correspond to the evolution of the consciousness, both incarnate within that form and overshadowing it. How does one establish this relationship, this movement between that which is potential and that which is actual? This is where function comes in. Function is the organization of one activity, all activities, and of one's economy to serve a specific purpose. Let us look at this. This is right economy. What does it mean? Does it mean, for instance, that the disciple must focus 24 hours a day upon this one purpose in order to serve his particular function? Yes, it does, in that every activity into which he enters and every form for which he is responsible in the world of affairs must be appropriated by him as a soul to serve that purpose. Whatever the function is unimportant. However, let us say that the disciple's function is that of a teacher. This is his primary service plan. This is the way he relates to the divine purpose which has moved him into incarnation. It is his reason for being in form, in other words. Let us say that he works at this function objectively and obviously insofar as all of those who know him are concerned, 3 hours once a week, or 3 hours twice a week, or 3 hours 5 times a week. Nonetheless, all other activities into which he enters are appropriated to serve that function. For instance, his periods of rest, why does he take them? Not because he is tired, not because he likes to rest, not because this is the thing to do, everyone does it, but in order to facilitate his function so that his sleep at night, his periods of rest and recreation, his contacts with other people, all forms for which he is responsible in the world of affairs, all activities into which he enters are appropriated. There is meaning behind this term. They are appropriated and put into right use to serve this function. He takes his vacation in order to facilitate his function because balance is needed. The purpose for such vacation is not pleasure. His goal during the vacation itself may be pleasure, in order to facilitate his function. Once the group, that is, all the active members of the group on a discipleship level grasps this concept of economy, grasps that area within which they are best fitted to serve at this particular time and place and put such understanding into immediate application, then the problems of the group insofar as economy is concerned will have been aligned with the solution and divine adjustment will proceed to work out. The very important point here is the wielding of energy. If you appropriate a form, whether it is an objective object or whether it is an activity such as that of sleeping, this is an activity into which you enter with very little thought or purpose. Too often it is simply because you are tired or because it is the thing to do. The activity then serves little real purpose. Appropriate that activity as the conscious soul incarnate. Reach out with the will and appropriate that activity, making it serve your function. This appropriation is an initiatory act. You will come into a greater understanding of it as such once you begin to utilize the will in this way, appropriating every activity into which you formerly entered automatically, or for whatever reason, such as the act of eating, of breathing, etc. The human consciousness self-motivation is primarily that of survival. The human sleeps to live, he eats and breathes to live, etc. Added to this, then, are all of the emotional motivations, the desires. He sleeps to dream or to escape, etc. The soul appropriates the energy, force, and substance of all of these forms because an activity is a form, and in this way, through this initiatory action, he not only sets into controlled motion the energy, force, and substance of his instrumentality in his environment, but he begins, step by step, to master it, to make a new impression upon it, to redeem it. Chapter 14. The New Path. An area of confusion. Modus operandi of the hierarchy. Fear of cooperation. I have indicated to you that there is much overshadowing you which has not yet impressed the group mind with that which would permit its precipitation. You are much closer now than you were. However, you are avoiding certain areas of thought and experience which would bring you directly under the overshadowing. This is, you must realize, because that which the overshadowing contains is in contradiction to many of your frequencies, ideas, and concepts. I am not saying this as a criticism. It also contains clarification of an area of what I shall call deliberate confusion within the group consciousness regarding cooperative leadership. You are coming into an entirely new phase of growth and development, of specialized training and of service, both individually and collectively. Very shortly, after you are established within the group focus which you are beginning to create at this point and which you are projecting, the new path, the new information regarding cooperative leadership, will be projected via this group unit, serving in this way, to the overall group membership, and to others who are not at this moment functioning as members of the group but who do have a definite relationship with it. There is a problem within this group, a problem which revolves around cooperative leadership, shared leadership, areas of responsibility within that shared leadership, and other problems with relationships. When I say that the overshadowing contains clarification of the deliberate confusion within the consciousness, this indicates that you are deliberately, each in his own way, adding to, aiding, creating an area of confusion regarding these concepts, which has made it extremely difficult to project any instruction whatever regarding the subject of cooperative leadership. This deliberate confusion, which does not permit the spiritual light with its clarifying quality to penetrate into the thought processes and brain consciousness, has various factors contributing to its thought processes and form. These factors differ within the various individual areas of consciousness of the group. They need to be taken out and examined in order for you to meet the deliberate confusion and so align yourselves with the clarification that it can be brought into an alignment with you in your centers of awareness. Within this area of confusion there are many thoughts or emotions which have not been expressed to the group, to the individual or individuals concerned. Oftentimes there are areas of thought and feeling which have not been expressed by the individual in relationship to himself. That is, he has not permitted himself to look into his own thought and emotional content regarding this particular area. I had hoped that I would find you ready to receive at least the beginning of this instruction. Again, while I am not criticizing you, I do not find you yet quite ready. There is still deliberate confusion regarding the subject. But we have opportunity here to spend more time to endeavor to arrive at some dissipation of the confusion and so proceed, if only very briefly, to certain basic concepts that are of importance to you now, or we can wait until you are all together within the group focus in the new location. You realize that this is the last opportunity prior to that move. It is, then, up to you to decide when this will receive your attention and when it can be initiated for the new growth, the new understanding brought to bear via initiatory action upon the group life and affairs. Only one point I would have you consider, that is the moon cycle, which is very conducive to this effort. An aid would be for each one to be completely honest with himself as he looks into those ideas and concepts which he is attempting to formulate into thoughts and to express to the group. Also, for each one, when he does have something to say, to speak with a complete honesty within himself as he selects ideas and concepts and formulates these into thoughts. Remember, this is not criticism of you. Much real growth and development brings you to the stage of looking at your state of consciousness as a group, and thus finding your right relationship within the group. This idea of cooperative leadership is not new. It is the modus operandi of the hierarchy. But it is a new concept where humanity is concerned. I would like to project much instruction concerning this concept and related concepts, but I am unable to do so because of what I must define as deliberate confusion. This deliberate confusion does not exist within this group alone. It is an area of deliberate confusion which is common to almost all disciples in the world today. This is important because it is a new concept in regard to relationship to humanity, because it is necessary for a consciousness which in a sense has not aspired to it, referring to the discipleships of the world. There is the deliberate construction, by this conscious man in the brain, of confusion, so the basic concept of this subject cannot clarify the problems in leadership. This is of tremendous importance in the world of affairs. I think of the world of affairs on a very broad scale as it relates to the activities of the leaders of the race, the leadership of humanity, the discipleship of the world, and so on down to varied levels of leadership. This overall group who constitutes the incarnate focus of this new ashram has embodied the problem, both in order to bring it into a focus and to invoke a solution, in its natural and normal human nature. Within the group, there is fear of the various functions and offices not only within the ashram, but fear of the very cooperation which must be rightly related within a field of shared relationships and responsibility. I am referring now to offices or functions which the group, in one way or another, fears. The fear does not want to know what these functions are. It does not want to know the field of shared responsibility which is cooperative leadership. The first step that has to be taken is the cleaning of this confusion and fear. Remember that fear is basic to resentment, criticism, to almost any negative emotional quality. These fears must be faced. Confusion which is created because of fear has to be dissipated so that clarification can be brought to bear upon this extremely important subject. Remember, you are as yet a small group insofar as your outer physical form is concerned. Fortunately, you are a small group. But you are a seed group. You are moving now through a training process which is bringing you to the point of development wherein you as a group must assume the responsibility, as the discipleship of the world, for the manifestation of the divine plan for humanity. In so doing, you must understand the concept of cooperative leadership, for this will be your modus operandi within the field of humanity. In other words, that which is the method, technique, relationship within the hierarchy, is now moving down to the discipleship of the world and will be utilized. The present world group of disciples has not proceeded to function through this particular pattern of relationship because the evolutionary development of humanity does not permit it. It has functioned through focal points who were dictators. These were the leaders, and this has been necessary and right, but if you will truly look upon the spiritual leadership of the world, you will find that that leadership has been one of a dictatorship, leaders who were dictators and their followers. It has been right and good and necessary. But now there is a new structure which must be established, a new type of relationship within the discipleship of the world which will permit a higher frequency, a higher and finer quality and a higher type of intelligent activity to carry the leadership, insofar as the divine plan for humanity is concerned, into the world of affairs. I realize that time is a factor for which you must account. Therefore, because of this, I am going to suggest that you contemplate during this moon cycle and consider this concept, its problems and its solution, and your contribution to the deliberate confusion. Perhaps later we can make a new approach to the subject as we find ourselves again approaching the full moon. I do not find the time available now to swing the group into the necessary approach to any illumination or revelation. Certainly the effort can be taken up where we left off when again the cycle is favorable. I simply suggest that you dissipate the confusion so that you are not yourselves adding to it. Prepare for illumination, for there is much overshadowing you regarding this. Remember that to be overshadowed, there must be within you that which attracts the overshadowing. The discipleship of the world must pattern its relationships after the relationships which already exist within the ashram, that relationship of cooperative leadership, rather than that of a dictator issuing commands to a group of followers. It is not enough to understand one's own function. The disciples must come to that point of loving understanding and that point of right relationship, so that they can share the responsibility for a leadership capacity in the manifestation of the divine plan for humanity. The fear of all groups, particularly the newer members, is that of taking responsibility. All want a leader and want to follow that leader, because this has been the modus operandi. But it is becoming outmoded. There is naturally a great deal of fear surrounding this very thing, fear of being a dictator, fear of being dictated to, and yet fear of taking responsibility for one's own function or office. You must remember that the true leader is the one who has been inspired by some concept, some truth, and can inspire others to follow, not himself, but the truth or the concept. This is true leadership. In this group, you will find that there are many who want the approval of the master, who want to be told what to do by the master, who do not want to take their share of the responsibility and follow the idea. The student rebels, the disciple resists this taking of responsibility and thereby adds to the deliberate confusion. There is the fear of assuming an area of responsibility and of being responsible to the truth, for the truth. One must assume one's own area of responsibility in the network of relationships. No longer will the master dictate to the disciple, who must also become a leader. Chapter 15. The Seventh Ray Organization. The Group Economic Problem. The New Thought Form. Presentation of the Wisdom. Etheric Structure. I am going to project a major concept to which I ask that you be as receptive as possible. This concept, with which you have been overshadowed from great heights over a long period of time, is contradictory to much of the outer activity which has gone into your present effort. Therefore, as with all major and new concepts, it has given rise to a great deal of opposition from within the instrumentality of the overall life and its environment. I should like first, in order to build a greater receptivity within the instrumentality of a group to this concept, to explain that the concept is of such a nature that its acceptance and embodiment would result in a totally different directional movement of the energy, force, and substance of the group life from that direction which it has been and is taking. This does not mean that the direction in which you are moving, and the direction which you have taken, is either oppositional to the divine plan or that it is in any way wrong for you. What I am compelled, in a sense, to do, is to point out to you a new concept which is of a higher frequency than that which you have accepted and are endeavoring to embody, in the working out of your various problems. This does not mean that the new concept is right and the old one wrong. It does mean that the group consciousness, imprisoned with its inner conflict to which it has invoked an answer, must, after having received and understood that answer, accept or reject it as the proper solution in this particular time and place, and as the path which the group will or will not take. In other words, the concept which I am projecting is of such a nature that if you are in your totality unable to accept the concept and unable to accept its embodiment, then you have my approval and my continued aid, if you decide to proceed along those lines which you have already started. What is the problem to which I am referring? You identify it largely as a financial problem. It is actually an economic problem in the activity sense, and it does manifest itself in many different ways within a group life and affairs. It is not strictly a problem of finance. It is not strictly a problem of service. It cannot be labeled strictly as any one or other of these related, apparent problems. It is the sum total of them. For instance, you have the problem of finding your relationship within the one life and within the body of humanity. You have the problem of inner and outer organization. You have the problem of right activity. You have all of the attendant problems which naturally arise during a transition period from dominance in the form of one ray energy, the third ray, to dominance in the form of another ray, the seventh ray energy. It is going to be necessary for you to open your minds completely for me to be able to project the concept, because there is a subjective rejection of it from within the integrated mind and the integrated astral-emotional body of a group life. Many of you have determined that an outer organization, a legal structure, a legal entity is necessary in order to develop and express your service potential within the economic structure of the human family. This may be true. It is dependent entirely upon the group consciousness, upon its decision and its initiatory faculties. I would have you consider very carefully several related concepts. First, this new thought form presentation of the wisdom is new. You will notice that I have not said that the concept of the soul is new, or that the path of initiation is new, or that the wisdom is new, but that this presentation, this thought form presentation of the wisdom is entirely new. And it creates within the occult world a precedent. The method by which this thought form presentation of the wisdom is endeavoring to make itself felt within the body of humanity is new. Training in the use of certain techniques and certain alignments and the giving to those who individually within themselves, if you will please forgive my being so frank with you, could not merit a direct alignment with the hierarchy is new. Yet, they share a united effort to serve the plan to which they have made such a sincere and dedicated response. They carry to the average metaphysically minded or esoterically minded human beings throughout the world, the energies, the focused attentions of the hierarchy. This is new. None of the thought forms as to the spreading of the wisdom, the training of disciples, the methods used by the hierarchy in contacting and influencing the human mind and heart, none of these are a utilization of already established thought forms. They are entirely new. Now look at the apparent insolubility of your particular financial situation. This has not been resolved, nor has a solution been envisioned by any orthodox approach to it. None of the thought forms existent within the occult, esoteric, metaphysical, or even the business world or the religious world, none of these thought forms have been utilized or have been receptacles for a solution to this particular problem. Consider another point, another very unique fact in nature about a group which sets it apart from any other, and a fact about which many of you, particularly those with third and fifth ray conditioning, have lamented and complained, some of you almost to the point of withdrawal from this effort. It has been impossible, and I refer now not to an outer legal structure, to establish any known form of organization insofar as the activities of a group life are concerned, even from a directional, hierarchical perspective. The energy, force, and substance of this group life resisted every attempt from within itself, from outside itself and in some respects from above itself, to be organized into any pattern which could be seen from a subjective or objective view. This has been one of the greatest protections which the group has had from its very inception. There has never been a predictable target in the future, toward which the opposition could gather together its forces in order to strike what would be a death blow, so to speak, to the group itself. You have had no leader in the usual sense of the word, nor have you ever received any instruction or guidance which would have permitted the natural creation or movement of a leader into the group life. Look back to the problem of finance. In order to serve with this thought form presentation of the wisdom, the divine plan for humanity came before the group, and the effort to solve this problem was made by those who were intimately concerned, at that time, with the carrying forward of the effort. A major decision was made at that time which carried my approval, and it still does for that matter if this continues to be the group's choice, that being to charge fees for the teaching. When this was done, the energy, force, and substance of the group life was moved into a specific direction which could only result, in some time and place, in the organization of a legal entity and hence in the incarnation of the group life into this very problem, and for which there is much right use already established in these thought forms. Go behind all of the rationalization which produced this decision, and again do not misunderstand me, it is my effort here to clarify. I am not criticizing or reprimanding, nor even suggesting that you change the thought form. This is your choice. But I should like you to be able to see from a somewhat different perspective, because someday, sooner or later, whether it is in this incarnation or in another, the group will have to redirect its steps. Look behind all of the rationalization which produced this decision and find the basic motivating power. I am referring to power, not thought form motivation, not concept motivation, but energy. The basic motivating energy and power behind this decision was fear, not the motivation to be of service. This motivation was always there and has been there and will always be there. But motivating power, motivating energy in any level of development below that of mastery, is not a pure unadulterated energy, it is combined of many forces, of many energies. Behind everything there is a service drive. And again, I am not saying that this was wrong motivation. I would say it was wrongly interpreted because this decision was made in order to permit those concerned to serve. Yet, I ask you, if the decision had not been made, would these same individuals have done any differently insofar as their service motivation was concerned? In other words, with or without this decision, these same individuals would have carried out their service activity. Are you beginning to see the related concepts which reveal the consciousness behind its rationalization? The decision to charge fees, to establish the profession on a fee basis, was based upon fear of the lack of finance, fear of indebtedness, of poverty, of out-and-out lack insofar as the basic necessities are concerned. This fear is still very, very evident, very much with every one of you as you approach the concept of service itself. It is this fear which you hide behind with rationalization, and the moment you begin to rationalize the truth into something else, you cloud your vision so that you cannot see the answer before you. As I stated, this decision established the directional movement of the group life into the body of humanity. It determined that a legal structure would have to be established. There would have to manifest an outer organization of disciples who would be identified with a particular form, identified with a particular entity, and hence limited by the limitations of that form and that entity. It means that all of the problems attendant with this kind of venture would be yours, plus the problems which you would naturally manifest as a result of the inner conflict of purpose which you would experience both individually and collectively. Now, what is the concept? That if first you choose, and second if you were able to embody it. And I do not tell you that you should choose it. And even if you do choose it, that you are ready and able to embody it. I am bringing you this concept only because you have demanded it. Various ones of you from within the group life have demanded the projection of this concept. I am not by any means even advising you or suggesting that you make any attempt at this point to embody the concept. The embodiment of the concept will come sooner or later with the evolutionary development of the group and its initiatory ability. However, I am not the one to determine the right time for that embodiment, and I would not be projecting this concept at this time if it were left to my decision. In a very real sense, you stand in a similar position to those disciples in the very beginnings of Christianity who took upon themselves the responsibility to bring an energy and a concept to bear upon humanity as a whole. Certainly the path which they took, the decisions which they made, the solutions to their problems which they brought into manifestation, are not the same ones which you will manifest. Yet you stand in a very similar position, and the degree of inner divine strength, of faith, of determination, and of persistence are as requisite for you as they were for them. First, a seventh-ray organization is an organization within which the seeds of death are not planted. The organizational forms with which the world is familiar today are of a third-ray nature. Their death is predetermined by their birth. They are established for a specific purpose and goal, which is of such a nature that it evolves, crystallizes the form, and in itself, when that form has become sufficiently crystallized, brings about the death of the form. A seventh-ray organization is of a different nature. Rather than incorporating the laws of birth and death, the seventh-ray organization uses periodicity in such a way that its form is an etheric substance and can never become crystallized. Its outer structure is of an etheric nature and can never crystallize. Being of an etheric nature without an outer crystallization or crust, it then is subject to the ebb and the flow of the spiritual soul and the monad which overshadows it. It is enabled to constantly adapt itself accordingly and to embody from season to season that which has application within its sphere of service. Where is its relationship within the body of humanity? How does it relate? Its relationship is through its membership. Each member of any group is a member of humanity. Each one of you is a vortex of force, of spiritual force, within the body of humanity. Each one of you is a unit of spiritual soul consciousness within the consciousness of humanity, working from within that consciousness. The seventh ray organization then, in its etheric structure, finds its point of entry into the body of humanity, both into its consciousness and into its outer life and affairs, via each one of its focal points, its membership. You are like, in a way, those etheric connections which carry into the brain certain frequencies of energy, certain concepts having to do with function. You are the point of contact within the body of humanity, which is, remember, the brain of the planetary logos, for those of us within the hierarchy who are serving with you. Try if possible to see the difference between a physical dense third and fifth ray organization, and an etheric organization working through its many focal points within the body of humanity. The members of the seventh ray etheric organization are not identified by any form, which in itself must arouse opposition, are not then limited by the limitations of any such form, but are free agents of the divine plan. Each one is their own initiator in cooperation with one another, with those seniors who are related to them, with the Christ, and so on. Now the connotations, the demands of such an effort are greater than any of you have been able, up to this point, to face in the world within which you live and within which you have evolved over many incarnations. This has created within you its own fear, its own demands. Yet the embodiment of such a concept would demand fearlessness, complete fearlessness, from every member of the overall group life, for you would not have the security of the outer form to fall back upon. You would not have the strength or the security of an outer demanding and commanding form. You would be bound together by a common purpose and goal within which you would manifest a common, interrelated and interwoven, but never an imprisoning, activity. Now I wish again to break through some of the rationalization which you use to justify taking certain actions without realizing that a fear motivation is behind it. There is nothing wrong with taking action because of fear. There is error when you do so without facing it or realizing what you are doing. One of the most common thought forms of the world, which you accept most wholeheartedly whenever you try to think of working as free agents of the plan without the security of an outer form, is the thought form which has to do with contributions. I am going to break that for you now in perhaps a startling way. In the beginning I stated that everything about this new presentation of the wisdom was new, its methodology, the presentation itself, its service activity. Of course you make your first mistake in placing any security upon contributions as a method of financing your activities. But because you do think, you must have some ideas as to how the plan can manifest your needs, as long as you are working within the plan. Consider this. First, how do you know that a major contribution will be made to one or two or three or more of you in order for you to carry out your service activities, if the contributor cannot deduct this from his income tax? How do you know if a prospective contributor is only motivated by a desire for more material gain? And how great is your service if you are contributing to this type of motivation? If you can inspire by your works, not by your words, not your needs, not your insecurity, but by your works, a contribution, large or small from any member of the human family whose motivation is to serve and to cooperate with the plan, how much greater is your service than if you are inspiring him to simply write this off his income tax? Your purpose, the reason that you are receiving so much attention from the hierarchy, from the Ashramic group life, from the planet itself, is to evolve the consciousness of humanity within which you live to the same or like dedication as your own. You are an overall group life. You are the birth of the new consciousness within the body of humanity, a seed group working from within to lift, to aid, to speed the evolution of the humanity with whom you share common problems. And recognize that every individual or personal problem which you solve is a service rendered to the whole of humanity. There is another common misconception based upon your acceptance of a well-established thought form which has to do with the spread of the wisdom throughout the body of humanity. You have accepted the idea, the concept, the thought form, that in order to move the wisdom, to establish it as a movement within the body of humanity, you must establish an outer organization from within which you can work. That you must have the strength, the weight, the prestige, the wealth, and so on, of such an organization. Again, this is a misconception. It is the strength, the weight, the wealth of the divine plan which will move the wisdom into and through the body of humanity without imprisoning it in those forms which would create opposition within the human family. Do recognize that if this wisdom becomes identified within and with any established form, national, ideological, any kind, it is automatically limited to that form by the very nature of humanity and cannot then, subjectively or objectively, move into that which is the opposition of the form within which it is limited. The moment you establish an outer form, then, as an overall group life, you are obligated to take sides in the conflicts raging within the world today. Do you think, for instance, that within communist Russia there are no disciples serving the divine plan, working with as much dedication and as much sincerity and greater hardships, as yourselves? Do you think that if there are, that you are not related to them, that you do not give and take of the strength within that subjective group life which includes disciples in all departments of human living, in all types and kinds of bodies? If one of you belongs to an organization, this is different. Then you are working within a field of service as a focal point of contact through which the organized group life on etheric levels can work. And in so doing you are functioning properly and you are not limiting the whole of your group life to that form, within which your service is found. The wisdom cannot be permanently limited or imprisoned within any form. It can be temporarily, however. You can proceed along this path which you have chosen, and you can evolve thereby and serve the plan. But you will, of necessity, have to undergo the karmic consequences attendant with such a decision. In addition, you will have to undergo the shattering of that form, and the necessity of radical change at a later date, whether within this incarnation or another. When your consciousness has reached this development, this will be its decision. You will abstract your security from every outer form, placing it via your own higher alignment upon that source which feeds you spiritually, thus aligning and dedicating your instrumentality as well as your consciousness to the divine plan. When that time comes, you will make no demands of a material nature. You will be able to accept whatever the divine plan holds for you, knowing that whatever it is, poverty or wealth, or any one of the areas in between, this is where you are best fitted to be of service. You will take that which you have and put every particle of energy, force, and substance into service for the divine plan and for humanity according to your condition, according to your material status, at that particular moment. You will not limit yourself to that particular condition in your own thinking. You will be ready to live in that place economically, socially, in every way, where you can be of the best service to the plan. You will have no fears of your own personal safety, pleasure, ambitions, or desires. You may have preferences. Your likes and dislikes in a certain sense will be discarded, and the ability to live joyously in the moment, within the economy of the one life, serving that divine purpose which organizes that economy into an ordered activity, will be yours. You will not require an outer form within which to proclaim your discipleship, your brotherhood, your friendships, and regardless, this may be the most difficult of all to accept and to abide by when that time comes, of what activity or direction your outer life and affairs will be taking, never will you permit a word of complaint to pass through your lips, never. If in your station in life you have bills to pay, you will find a way of paying them without talking about them and without permitting these to become oppositional to the plan you serve. When this time comes you will truly have learned to cast your bread upon the waters and you will receive whatsoever of the materials, subjectively and objectively, of the economy of the one life that you can put into right use. And you will be satisfied with that quota. You have brought into direct overshadowing a concept contained within the larger concept regarding the use of the will. This concept cannot be projected to you, it cannot find its way through whatever technique or method into the consciousness of the incarnating soul without creating within it some change. How does the initiate invoke into his life and affairs divine will? This has been a question which has, at one time or another, confronted each of you. The answer is very simple and direct and most difficult for the consciousness imprisoned and limited within the form nature to accept and to embody. The divine will of the plan itself, the divine will which is held in focus by the Christ, which is brought into a planetary focus at Shambhala, is invoked by the initiate as he abstracts his personal will from all horizontal alignments and follows in full waking consciousness the path of least resistance created by that invoked divine will which he has directed forward upon his path. I am not referring to a passive, non-resistance in the world of affairs. I am referring to a dynamic use of the will, which is invoked by the initiate disciple the moment he focuses his attention to serve within the body of humanity. He abstracts his personal will, and therefore apparently his right to choose, from all horizontal alignments. This kind of teaching is not easy to receive, and it is never given with the intent that the receiver shall accept and embody it. It is given upon the demand of the incarnate soul. The disciple transmitting such teaching to those invoking it stands aside, leaving them free to make whatsoever decision they will. The disciple in the world of affairs might appear to be making decisions, but his decisions would have already been made on higher levels and the results of those decisions would be manifested continuously within his life and affairs. The disciple's response to any condition would be of an initiative nature. The focused will would build into the brain consciousness a response according to the divine plan. Each disciple is within himself an expression of the plan. He is a tone. He is, both in his potential and his present development, an essential part of the plan. The moment that the disciple is able to abstract his personal will from all horizontal alignments, thereby aligning and subjugating it to the divine will, he thereby invokes divine will into his life and affairs. This means invoking into his environment as an impressing agent, the focused divine will of the plan. That divine will immediately place him within the situation, the circumstance, the group of associates within which and wherein he can be of the best possible service. This may not appear in any way contradictory to the outer appearance, or it may appear contradictory. It may appear to be in contrast, but it does not necessarily follow that in each and every one, or even in the majority of cases, that this would be true. The usual path, not always, but usually, is that in the beginning the disciple is placed within a condition, a circumstance, and a group of associates that he does not particularly like. These are the tests and trials of initiation. He may not like those for various reasons, he may fear them, they may not be for his particular comfort or pleasure. He may feel inadequate to them. Whatever the reason, this is unimportant. These likes and dislikes, these illusions and glamours of the form, have to be burned out of him. And do not forget that as he applies for initiation, he is attracting and invoking the fire of initiation. He is demanding temperance, so that what follows after such an invocation is not usually to his liking, and would not usually be his choice insofar as his personality is concerned. It will not necessarily produce an appearance of conflict with or within the environment, the society, etc., within which he finds himself. It may necessitate his revision of his entire concept of service. If, for instance, his preconceived ideas regarding service are that he can serve better those who are wealthy, those who are of a higher intelligence, he will likely find himself among the very poor and the unintelligent, or the uneducated. Recognize that the divine plan, which holds within it the evolutionary development of humanity, holds within it the evolution of the disciple as well, the disciple who serves that divine plan. While it might appear at times to deal harshly with him, as when he finds himself within the one life, when he understands the plan, he takes joy in each truth that is presented to him, regardless of what that truth might do to his persona. His personality would not be an automaton. But his personality would be in every instance the appearance of his soul, the appearance his soul is making within the world of affairs. Recognize that the persona, as such, is only an appearance, it is not the entity. Every incarnate consciousness that is identified in the world of affairs as a disciple has entertained the concept, intuits the concept, let us say, and works toward it as a goal of establishing sufficient control of the Devic evolution to order whatsoever manifestation he envisions or intuits as being the next step in the manifestation of the divine plan. And this is a true concept. The initiate does do this, the initiate of a certain degree. But before the initiate becomes an agent of the divine will, a directing agent of the divine will, before he can order the Devas, he must have learned to take orders. Before he can order the plan into manifestation, he must have been ordered by the plan. It is impossible to give oneself, with the many connotations of the term and the concept, to the plan, to align one's will with the divine will and to live within the plan as that plan manifests, without learning about it, without becoming, in consciousness, permeated by it and absorbed into it. When this state of consciousness is achieved, then the initiate of a certain degree comes into full command of the Devic evolution within his particular jurisdiction or economy. You have not been asked, nor is it even suggested, that you make any decisions of any kind at this time. You have been given a great deal to digest, a great deal to endeavor to understand. Do not attempt to make any decisions until you have arrived at an understanding of what you are deciding and why. I am going to suggest that you give these concepts your thought and that in the light of them you endeavor to bring the light of the soul into your thought life, your emotional life and your outer activities for the purpose of revealing to your consciousness what your thoughts, your feelings, your acts and works proclaim. Make an effort, impersonally, to see into the incarnate self, its spirit, its soul, its form. See it as it is and in that way recognize the next step for each one in his own evolutionary development, in his own growth, knowing that that growth is growth in service. Do this without a sense of guilt for that which does not live up to the ideal or that which does not proclaim discipleship. Nor take pride in that which does. Make this observation from the perspective of the soul in order for each one to find his own inner direction. Chapter 16. Precipitating basic concepts: the problem of finance, group agreement, cycle of activity, and perseverance. First, I am going to speak to you generally regarding your acceptance, your embodiment, and your precipitation of the basic concepts of this teaching, which are prerequisites to a successful working out of the plan in any of its various aspects or activities. There has been from within the overall group membership a constant dissatisfaction with financial appearances in the group life and affairs, both individually and collectively. There has been a constant, and I might add a one-pointed expenditure of energy in this direction, a dissatisfaction with results of effort. If your effort is in the first place rightly motivated, and in the second place, if it is based upon a grasp of the comprehension of the plan, and in the third place, if it is rightly directed, and the results do not live up to that which you have expected or which you have been taught to expect, then it is right for you to question. It is right for you to seek a better way of carrying out your service to humanity. But see to these three factors before you disperse, deflect, and divert your energy, force, and substance in this way. It is impossible for you to achieve any success in your various efforts as long as you are aligned within the intent of the overshadowing Ashramic plan and the concepts which it teaches, while at the same time you are endeavoring to achieve success via the old methods and the old techniques. This is something you have not fully realized. It is something you must take into consideration if you are going to either prove or disprove the reality or the value of the basic concepts of this teaching and the techniques which it places before you. In the first place, as long as you accept the concept with the mind and the feeling nature on a conscious level and apply in your objective efforts a different concept, you can expect results from neither, for your energies are being directed into a conflict which negates the outer effect you wish to create in time and space. It is true that the sum total of power up to this point has been given to the structure, the form structure, already built into the group body itself. Up to this point, the power of manifestation has been given not to the new techniques, not to the creative magical effort of the conscious soul incarnate, but rather to the tremendous body of forms that were created in the past, within which you have functioned as personalities, and within which you still, to a degree, function as personalities, and yet make the effort to function as the soul. There is not yet a clear-cut comprehension of magical techniques sufficient to bring the energy, force, and substance of a group life into a one-pointed focus, giving it a one-pointed directional movement to the group instrumentality and into the group environment, manifesting then that life and affairs which will carry a planned service activity into and throughout the body of humanity. It is difficult for you, at this particular point of your development, and while in the process of training, to grasp sufficiently the power of your subjective effort, the power of your thought life, the power of your feeling nature, the power of the brain activity itself, particularly when all of these are combined into a moving, living, manifesting activity. I hold in focus, overshadowing you as a focal point, the answer to every problem of manifestation which any one of you or any member of a group has. Yet, I find a great difficulty in moving this overshadowing into your consciousness as a group. Endeavor to lift up your sensitivity at this moment and to align it with that which overshadows and consider it an approach to an understanding of the following considerations. What value, insofar as manifestation is concerned, whether it is controlled consciously or whether it is unconscious, subconscious control, do you place in an economic sense upon your own individual energy, force, and substance? Consider this now. What economic value do you place in a manifesting sense upon your thought life, upon your feeling life, your astral emotional life, upon the brain activity as it moves energy and force via your physical body into outer manifestation? Consider this first. Do you as an individual endeavoring to function as a conscious soul incarnate and as a disciple within a definite Ashramic endeavor to believe that you hold within your consciousness and instrumentality the power of manifestation? Consider it, and if you do, to what degree is that power of manifestation utilized consciously in your daily activity in service to the divine plan for humanity? Another question. Are you consciously aware of a group problem in finance or in economy? Are you consciously aware of an individual problem of this kind? What creative effort have you made toward its solution? Another question, and be very honest with yourself with these answers, for it is in a correct understanding of these that the answer to your problem lies. In your own consideration, within the privacy of your own thoughts, in the tonal quality of your feelings, and in your discussion with other members of the group, how do you feel that this problem will eventually be solved? When you envision a solution, where do you place yourself as a causal factor in the manifestation of that solution? What does conscious soul incarnate mean? Have you considered what would happen if every member of a group were to focus his creative attention for a given period daily upon the wielding of his energy, force, and substance to manifest, first, group service activity, and second, the forms needed to carry out this planned service? There is within the economy of a group life and affairs a great deal of energy, force, and substance available which can be redirected from its manifestation of individual problems and obstacles to group success into those channels which will manifest in a group service activity. Up to this time this group has been unable, and this is through no fault of its own. Do not misunderstand this instruction as a reprimand. It is not such, to integrate its substantial forces upon any one-pointed direction. There must be first, for group success, an agreement made between all members of the group, an agreement into which each one will enter, not in part but in total, into which each one will give his energy, force, and substance. There must be second, after such an agreement has been made or has been entered into by all members of the group, a cycle of activity within which each member of the group contributes his energy, force, and substance to the manifestation in time and space of that which was agreed upon. And there must be third, the perseverance of the entire group in maintaining that integrated focus, of maintaining the constant movement of energy, force, and substance throughout the cycle. It will then, as it moves along, attract to itself, carry and overcome the sum total of subconscious opposition remaining within the form nature of the group to the manifestation of that which has been planned and entered into by each member. The first step that every member of the entire group must enter into is an agreement which will create a one-pointed focus of the will energy of the group which directs the energy, force, and substance of that group in a specific direction. I am referring to the overall group life and affairs, to all of those and more specifically to that group nucleus of disciples wherever they are functioning under hierarchical contacts, those who are endeavoring to work with this advanced plan. This may seem to you to be a presentation fraught with great obstacles, yet this is one of the laws of group progress. No matter what work any one of you individually might set out to do, you are a member of a group, and as such, the energy, force, and substance will be either with your effort or it will be against your effort, or it will be so neutral that it will have little effect one way or another. When you have a group of disciples, there is, first of all, no agreement as to what you are collectively endeavoring to do. In many instances, you are functioning as group brothers. On a conscious level there is the aspiration to serve the Ashramic plan, and there is the aspiration to manifest brotherhood, to manifest a group effort. Nevertheless, very often the individual efforts are at cross purposes with one another, and not deliberately so, simply because there has not been a coming together, a meeting of minds upon a specific subject, whatever that might be. If you could enter into a group experiment which would incorporate into a specific directional movement the energy, force, and substance of the group itself, and you were not successful, then, perhaps, it would be wise for you to look in other directions. Whatever material forms are needed for the manifestation of the group's service activity are available. There is no need other than your own growth, and I speak to you now not as individuals, but as a group, for your service to drag due to a lack of funds. It is foolishness. If you are to believe the teaching itself, then you cannot accept this. The conscious soul creates its service activity, and it creates whatever forms are necessary to carrying out the successful completion of that service. Just to add to this picture, consider and answer this question. How many hours of subjective effort did you give to the plan during the past week? Answer this only to yourselves. I do not need to hear your answer. A great effort has been made by a few, but the law of group progress will not permit the success, insofar as the outer life and affairs are concerned, of those few. The only way they can be successful, if this condition continues, would be to withdraw from the group and to work together without the oppositional weight, the dispersing of energies, the conflict in purpose and sheer emotional negativity as a result of the problem itself. I consider that you are now ready as a total group to come to a point of agreement for the sake of an experiment. But in order to do so, each is going to have to put aside his pet objectives in order to integrate the total effort into a specific direction. Certain ones of you within a group, and remember now I am speaking to the whole group, not just to a small group unit, have individual desires, ambitions, aspirations, and hopes regarding your particular service activity, what you would like to see accomplished within a certain period of time. This is fine. However, it is necessary for a good many of you to open your minds, to broaden your outlook to a consideration of the group effort rather than just your own, to the group effort rather than the effort being made in any one area, and to a solution of this problem on a group scale rather than an individual or a group unit scale. The length of the cycle is determined by the type, quality, and strength of the focus which is first established. For instance, disciples would set into motion a shorter cycle than beginners in an effort of this kind. I would not wish to place a time limit on the cycle, but rather to let you set into motion that which is a natural result of the strength of your focus. What you need to focus your attention upon is that which carries wherever it is, the service potential of the group, into outer manifestation in its particular relationship with the Ashramic plan and the time and place within which it is focused. What is the effort being made now by the group in service to the divine plan for humanity? The activity of teaching and learning is a part of the service activity. Combined in one, it is the teaching activity that is going on throughout the group, the training activity that is taking place throughout the group that is the group service at this time. There is that teaching which is being carried out by teachers in the field. This is a service activity of the entire group. These are not service activities of individuals. The teachers who are taking the lesson material into the body of humanity via a group or groups of students are not working as individuals. This is not an individual service. It is their contribution to a group service activity. The same is true of the training that is taking place with individuals. This is a group service activity, it is not an individual one. It is an individual contribution being made by all of those taking part within it to a group service activity. The group should focus upon the group service activity which is being carried forward at this time and the manifestation of those forms which are necessary to that manifestation. There is the constant recognition, voicing, and manifestation in a group sense of a problem. That is the lack of funds with which to carry out the group service activity. Students experience this in the effort they are making to pay for classes. Teachers experience this in the effort they are making to teach. In order to bring about a proper balance to manifest those forms which are necessary to the successful manifestation of the group service activity already underway, there must be a meeting of minds. There must be an integrated effort to direct the energy, force, and substance into manifestation of those forms which are needed. And there must be, third, the perseverance of the entire group in maintaining that integrated focus, of maintaining the constant movement of energy, force, and substance throughout the cycle. It will then, as it moves along, attract to itself, carry and overcome the sum total of subconscious opposition remaining within the form nature of the group to the manifestation of that which has been planned and entered into by each member. The first step that every member of the entire group must enter into is an agreement which will create a one-pointed focus of the will energy of the group which directs the energy, force, and substance of that group in a specific direction. I am referring to the overall group life and affairs, to all of those and more specifically to that group nucleus of disciples wherever they are functioning under hierarchical contacts, those who are endeavoring to work with this advanced plan. This may seem to you to be a presentation fraught with great obstacles, yet this is one of the laws of group progress. No matter what work any one of you individually might set out to do, you are a member of a group, and as such, the energy, force, and substance will be either with your effort or it will be against your effort, or it will be so neutral that it will have little effect one way or another. When you have a group of disciples, there is, first of all, no agreement as to what you are collectively endeavoring to do. In many instances, you are functioning as group brothers. On a conscious level there is the aspiration to serve the Ashramic plan, and there is the aspiration to manifest brotherhood, to manifest a group effort. Nevertheless, very often the individual efforts are at cross purposes with one another and not deliberately so, simply because there has not been a coming together, a meeting of minds upon a specific subject, whatever that might be. If you could enter into a group experiment which would incorporate into a specific directional movement the energy, force, and substance of the group itself, and you were not successful, then, perhaps, it would be wise for you to look in other directions. Whatever material forms are needed for the manifestation of the group's service activity are available. There is no need other than your own growth, and I speak to you now not as individuals, but as a group, for your service to drag due to a lack of funds. It is foolishness. If you are to believe the teaching itself, then you cannot accept this. The conscious soul creates its service activity, and it creates whatever forms are necessary to carrying out the successful completion of that service. Just to add to this picture, consider and answer this question. How many hours of subjective effort did you give to the plan during the past week? Answer this only to yourselves. I do not need to hear your answer. A great effort has been made by a few, but the law of group progress will not permit the success, insofar as the outer life and affairs are concerned, of those few. The only way they can be successful, if this condition continues, would be to withdraw from the group and to work together without the oppositional weight, the dispersing of energies, the conflict in purpose and sheer emotional negativity as a result of the problem itself. I consider that you are now ready as a total group to come to a point of agreement for the sake of an experiment. But in order to do so, each is going to have to put aside his pet objectives in order to integrate the total effort into a specific direction. Certain ones of you within a group, and remember now I am speaking to the whole group, not just to a small group unit, have individual desires, ambitions, aspirations, and hopes regarding your particular service activity, what you would like to see accomplished within a certain period of time. This is fine. However, it is necessary for a good many of you to open your minds, to broaden your outlook to a consideration of the group effort rather than just your own, to the group effort rather than the effort being made in any one area, and to a solution of this problem on a group scale rather than an individual or a group unit scale. The length of the cycle is determined by the type, quality, and strength of the focus which is first established. For instance, disciples would set into motion a shorter cycle than beginners in an effort of this kind. I would not wish to place a time limit on the cycle, but rather to let you set into motion that which is a natural result of the strength of your focus. What you need to focus your attention upon is that which carries wherever it is, the service potential of the group, into outer manifestation in its particular relationship with the Ashramic plan and the time and place within which it is focused. What is the effort being made now by the group in service to the divine plan for humanity? The activity of teaching and learning is a part of the service activity. Combined in one, it is the teaching activity that is going on throughout the group, the training activity that is taking place throughout the group that is the group service at this time. There is that teaching which is being carried out by teachers in the field. This is a service activity of the entire group. These are not service activities of individuals. The teachers who are taking the lesson material into the body of humanity via a group or groups of students are not working as individuals. This is not an individual service. It is their contribution to a group service activity. The same is true of the training that is taking place with individuals. This is a group service activity, it is not an individual one. It is an individual contribution being made by all of those taking part within it to a group service activity. The group should focus upon the group service activity which is being carried forward at this time and the manifestation of those forms which are necessary to that manifestation. There is the constant recognition, voicing, and manifestation in a group sense of a problem. That is the lack of funds with which to carry out the group service activity. Students experience this in the effort they are making to pay for classes. Teachers experience this in the effort they are making to teach. In order to bring about a proper balance to manifest those forms which are necessary to the successful manifestation of the group service activity already underway, there must be a meeting of minds. There must be an integrated effort to direct the energy, force, and substance into manifestation of those forms which are needed. After having entered into an agreement, and remember this agreement should be entered into by all those who are functioning as conscious disciples within the group, then a daily effort should be made on the part of every disciple in order that the group focus is not only established but it is maintained and the movement of energy, force, and substance given direction. It is maintained sufficiently long enough to overcome the opposition of the form to this manifestation. It would be a group effort, an effort of the entire group of disciples who are consciously functioning within the effort. Therefore, since it concerns the total group, it should be first on the subjective list. If you carry out the subjective effort, the objectification of it cannot help but follow. Chapter 17. Ceremonial Magic. Sacrificing ambition and desire. Deliberate cycle of conflict. Energies of group centers. The consciousness must align the throat center with the head center, must render the throat center negative to the head center, so that the impression which it receives is devoid of personal ambition and personal desire, so that the impression it receives and carries into the Devic forces which are under its direct control is that of divine purpose or intent, that which relates the one life with the humanity which the individual or the group is attempting to serve. Very often this means the sacrifice of personal ambition and desire of those involved in throat center function, just as it does for those involved in any service function. But here we come to the point of greatest danger, particularly at this time in the life of the service entity which we are creating. The throat center of this organization carries the seventh ray. This is the ray of ceremonial magic. I prefer the term divine law and order because this is the intent, the purpose of the throat center, to establish and to manifest in the form aspect the appearance of divine law and order in the affairs of men, carried by the seventh ray. As seventh ray comes into activity within any form or organization at this time, so does the activity of ceremonial magic. And with this comes much glamour, many of the old Atlantean patterns, tendencies, and forms which are karmic and have to be worked out. As the growing life, This overall group life, as well as any others, begins to function as a mentally polarized entity. This center becomes very active, and that which is both good and bad, so to speak, appears in the conflict within the center, within the individual attempting to function within that center, and in the relationship between the throat center and the head center. I am bringing this to your attention for several reasons. There is a conflict of forces, of energies, of purposes, subjective and objective, conscious and subconscious, being deliberately brought into activity by the ashram within which you are all related. Please divorce this conflict from personalities. This relates with function. If you must relate it with personality, then relate it with all of those personalities in the overall group life. This conflict, which was stimulated into activity at the first of this year, will continue throughout the next 7-year cycle. This is the cycle which relates with this particular area of growth in the development of this overall group life. So there will be, from time to time throughout the 7-year period, a very definite appearance of conflict between the head center and the throat center as the energies and forces which those two centers must carry enter into their natural opposition. What are these energies and forces which the two group centers must carry? Be sure that you understand this. The throat center must carry the throat center energy of the entire overall group life. It must bring that energy into a focus within itself. It must receive from its vertical alignment what might be called the throat center energy of the ashram with which it is affiliated or within which it is related. It must carry into contact with the throat center energies of the overall group life the seventh ray energy of divine law and order. This immediately and obviously brings into appearance the natural conflict within the throat center itself, the conflict between divine law and order as it comes into focus within the center and the personal ambitions and desires of every individual as these relate collectively within its own structure energy-wise. It focuses into outer appearance, and in the growth of the group in the instrumental sense, an unstable center. We can expect to see cycles wherein a great deal of growth will be made and cycles wherein very little growth will appear to be made. Through this center will come whatever attacks are made on the overall group life. These will most likely come in the area of organization as the group makes its particular growth as an organized form during this cycle. There will be conflict between the head center and the throat center as the head center attempts to impress upon the throat center the purpose of the overall group life which must be worked out in form. In order to prepare the entire group and the centers involved to carry this burden, the personnel have received an assignment from me to work subjectively during the coming 12-month period to establish a firm, steady, and stable alignment between the throat center and the head center. And via that alignment and the establishment of their own function, to align the personality consciousness and the substantial forces of the overall group life through the head center with the Ashramic center and the divine purpose which the ashram is serving. This is their assignment for a full 12-month period. There will be no other throat center function as such during this period. Throat center activity will be carried out throughout the group life as its members enter into their service activity. But throat center function will devote itself to this particular activity, to establish and make its alignment in cooperation with the head center to establish the positive and negative polarity of the overall group life. Every member of the group, particularly those serving in a leadership capacity, can aid this effort very simply. Give a few moments pause daily to the alignment of your own instrumentality, via your throat center, with divine purpose. Remember, these centers focus throat center and head center energy in the overall group life. The individual members of the group relate with the throat center via their own throat center and with the head center through their own head centers. It is vitally necessary in the growth of the entity to establish the inner basic center structure as perfectly and as purely as is possible because whatever appears outwardly must come through that center system. The heart center plays an important part in all of this by qualifying the activity of the two centers as they enter into relationship. Here is the danger point with divine love wisdom and all of the many connotations. The heart center is to qualify in the form sense between these two centers. Without such qualification, there would be a power conflict. If the heart center can permeate the activity of these two centers and the relationship of them with divine love wisdom, then the disaster of a power conflict taking precedence over the work of the plan would be completely eliminated. And do not forget that the growth that has been made in the Western world has been via this particular path. So that is a path of least resistance and one which must be accounted for as this entity makes its particular growth and development. If you will remember back to former teaching and training, the throat center played an undue part in the development of the Western disciple and world civilization. Therefore, this is important, and the path taken by the Western world can be avoided if the heart center can perform its function in relationship to the effort of these two centers. A code of ethics has to be formulated, and I am not speaking now of the written form, by the activity of the heart center. For it is the heart center which establishes, in the energy sense, the code of ethics of any organized life. It establishes the embodied character and principles of that life. Therefore, as the heart center comes into greater activity during this next 12-month period, that activity in itself will result in the working out, at the conference, of a code of ethics. This is something the heart center could give their attention to, if they wish, during the coming 12 months. The alignment of the throat center with the head center, in this chronological order, is particularly important, throat center to head center. The head center responds always. It has to be invoked into activity. Thus the greater effort, the initial activity, or the initiating of the relationship, must come from the throat center as the consciousness within it and as the man in the brain aligns his substantial forces, all of his personality desires and ambitions, with the energy and the concept of divine purpose. This polar alignment creates a magnetic field which is more in the form of a pyramid, the throat center and the heart center here, and the overshadowing Christ here. Picture a triangle, much as that used to illustrate the transmutation technique in the nature of the soul, with the Christ at the top point, the throat center in the middle, and the heart below, and a magnetic field of relationship interpenetrating and interconnecting the three and the creation of the magnetic field as a result of the interplay of the relationship between the two centers within the frequencies of substance which they inhabit. It is not only necessary to use ceremonial magic, but it is necessary to be cognizant of it, of the ceremonial magic which you use daily, moment by moment. It is also necessary to, in a sense, reorganize the magical effort, to direct it more consciously according to a divine purpose and a divine plan, for you are, all of you, daily engaged in ceremonial magic from the time you get up in the morning until the time you leave the instrument in a state of sleep. It is the relationship of the consciousness to the Devic forces which it inhabits and with which it is related. One more point. The activity which is carried out by the leadership conference is an initiatory activity, and in that sense, it is a beginning. A leadership conference focuses the energies of initiation, focuses the impulse to enter into a new cycle of outer growth and development, and releases that impulse into and throughout the overall group life. From that conference, then, the group itself, as a whole and in its many parts, completes the initiatory activity throughout the 12-month period which follows. The conference, then, is a beginning, not an ending. And I would have you consider this very carefully, taking the ball, so to speak, from this point, and carrying it to the goal line. Chapter 18. Inner Organization. The attempt to organize. The Ashramic purpose. The new civilization. One of the other problems with which you will be faced as you enter into the field is the attempt, both from within yourselves and those whom you attract as students and co-disciples, to organize the activity into an organization of the old age type, to organize the wisdom into a religious and philosophical order. This type of organization will defeat the purpose you serve. This is a concept which is most difficult to project, for the very nature of human consciousness today is such that this tendency to organize along these lines is of greatest predominance. This concept needs much meditation upon, much consideration before you begin to grasp the depth of my meaning. And herein is a warning: if you attempt to organize this thought form presentation into a set form, you will defeat its purpose and it will seek a new avenue of expression. Lucille. It is the inner organization within which the teaching forms its function. The first step on inner organization is the relationship with the One Life. Our relationship with the One Life is the Ashramic relationship. For example, if you remember, we were thinking in terms of initiation of the third hierarchy, the one ashram of the Christ. It is the Christ who is focusing the purpose through all these ashrams, and each master of an ashram is related to humanity via his ashramic organization. Here is where we begin the body of an organization. We are part of that ashramic group life. We are the lower purpose. Our master is focusing that purpose into humanity. We are that particular function within the ashramic group life that is embodying part of the externalization effort of the ashram. So we come into that function of the inner organization proceeding from a relationship with the ashram. Realize that it is the ashramic plan we are serving, as we, with the ashram, serve the plan that is held in focus by the Christ. Our relationship with humanity comes from this. What is our particular service relationship to ashramic purpose in this incarnation? What is the purpose of our ashram? The purpose of our ashram is to create a new civilization that would carry a higher state of consciousness, the fifth kingdom in nature, that is rising in the body of humanity. The ashramic purpose is a new civilization. It is our purpose as teachers to convey the wisdom, to embody it, to attract students who will themselves embody and carry the wisdom out into manifestation. As students are attracted to and receive the wisdom, and then as they move away from it, that movement carries the wisdom out, creating the new forms that are needed for the manifestation of the new civilization. This is how we proceed with inner organization. If we had that organization, then we could organize our own. We would have a purpose and a goal. Our purpose would not be self-motivated, but would be the ashramic purpose. The goal relates the ashramic goal with the goal of humanity and with yourself. Then we are able to organize our one energy, force, and substance into the activity that serves that purpose and goal. Chapter 19. Each individual is essential. The function of the leader. Your divine purpose. Relationship with the ashram. The progress which the overall group life has made during the past year has been such that the greatest advantage should be seized by the opportunity presented in the annual leadership conference. Previously, it has been impossible for the group to take the advantage offered in this opportunity because of that stage of growth through which it was passing during the time of each conference. This year, I should like to open the leadership conference to all of those who are attending leadership class, permitting each of you to take part in the conference, either through correspondence or actual physical attendance. And I would like to bring to your attention a new concept of the purpose for this conference, the function which it should perform in relationship to the overall group life. You realize, from previous instruction, that it is the function of the leader to be inspired by the world of ideas, the world of meaning, and in turn, to inspire a following whose attention is fixed upon the ideas and the world of meaning rather than the personality of the leader. The leadership conference can render a major service to the overall group life if it will endeavor to enter into this function of leadership, to utilize the opportunity presented, to bring into the physical brain consciousness those major ideas within the world of meaning which have specific relationship to the growth and development of the overall group as a whole, as well as to its service activity in this time and place. Each of those attending the conference should approach it from this perspective, making every effort to be receptive to those ideas and meanings which overshadow and with which he is specifically related as a disciple, formulating these ideas, concepts, these meanings, into a presentation which he will present as his major contribution to the leadership conference. Then, after all such ideas and concepts, all such meanings, have been presented to the leadership group attending the conference, they should be taken into meditation by the group as a total. They should be discussed only after that meditation, and only in relationship to how they can best be put into outer manifestation. They should be related to the growth and development of the overall group as a whole, as well as to its service activity, and should present no necessity for argument, for wrong relationships, within the group. Thus, the conference can serve to bring into activity the concept of cooperative leadership, where there is a give and take of inspiration, where there is a united effort on the part of all leaders to so relate their particular ideas, concepts, and meanings, to those of the total, to make whatever adjustments for the purpose of right relationship, of ideas, concepts, and meanings, are necessary, thus producing an outer group activity which is so coordinated in its many parts as to result in an effective total influence. Let each member attending the conference formulate his presentation prior to the date on which it meets, and let him then proceed from that presentation, cooperating with his brothers to the best of his ability. Insofar as each individual contribution is concerned, I would like to leave you as a leadership class with one major concept. This has relationship to divine purpose, to spiritual individuality, to specific function. Every member of the human family, regardless of his evolutionary development, regardless of his place in the scheme of things, and therefore, every member of the overall group life, has a specific function to perform within the one life. Each one is an individual, that is, he is, within his highest aspect, an essential part of the one life, indivisible, individual. In that relationship within the one life, each has a specific function to perform, a specific part to play. That is his divine purpose. It is reflected within each aspect of the total divine being. It is reflected within the overshadowing spiritual soul within the ashram. That purpose gives the soul his relationship within the ashram, his function. It is reflected within the conscious soul incarnate in the brain, and likewise, it is reflected within the threefold persona within the outward appearance. The totality of that divine being is focused into activity upon each of these planes as a result of this divine purpose, which is his specific individual relationship within the one life. Only he can make his contribution, no one else. Only he can serve his specific purpose, his particular relationship within the one life, no one else. It is this purpose which sends him forth into incarnation, into the evolutionary process, which carries him through the path of evolution into the final perfection and completion of his particular purpose and function. Now, certainly, he interprets his divine purpose differently within the different levels of his being, and according to his evolutionary development or his state of consciousness at any given moment. But always that interpretation has some relationship to, because it is a reflection of, his divine purpose. It may be oppositional, but it can be understood in its very opposition. It is this purpose which motivates all of his individual experience, both as a soul and as a man. Each of you has come to that time in your spiritual growth and development where you can begin to make a more conscious relationship with this, your divine purpose, first, by realizing and endeavoring to comprehend the fullness of the meaning that you have a particular, a special, an individual contribution to make to the total expression of the one life within which you live, move, and have your being. That this contribution relates you with all others, each also having his particular, his special function and contribution, but your importance, or the importance of anyone else, is only according to that relationship. And finally, utilizing this knowledge as a technique. Visualize your alignment from within your own brain consciousness, upward, into and through your overshadowing soul, and from there to that central spot, that essential individual divine being which you are, in your highest aspect, and through this alignment constantly invoke the growth and development of that particular contribution in right relationship with your incarnate consciousness, your instrumentality, and the time and place within which you live. I strongly urge each of you to take this instruction in all seriousness, and to apply it to the instruction projected regarding the leadership conference. Let your function within that conference be a part of the contribution which is yours to make within the one life, a conscious part of that contribution. Let your presentation be motivated, and therefore formulated, from that higher divine purpose which is the string, the thread of connectivity throughout your total being. And now thank you for your attention and cooperation. My peace is with you. Chapter 20. Depletion of group energy. Lack of integration. Formulate a group goal. Share responsibility. Master John. There has been a question about depletion of energies within the group. The condition is a rather widespread one, and it is therefore normal. Certainly there is a drain of energy upon all of those who, consciously or unconsciously, are linked up with the forces of light during these troubled times in which we live. World conditions vary from day to day in their degree of graveness. This happens to be one of the particular times when there is much instability. Those who are working in positions of influence, those who are intimately concerned with the problems of today are having to work overtime. This in itself creates a drain on vital life reserves or energies of those who are aligned with them and with the forces of light. Also, there is a depressing effect upon the etheric as a result of some of the impacts which are at large within the world as a whole. Then, of course, when disciples who have been given techniques for revitalization, etc., go along blithely and do not use these techniques, they can expect to be depleted. During a time such as this, it would be wise to make a practice of revitalization of the instrument cyclically, that is, not only once a day but perhaps 2 or 3 times a day. If this practice were carried out over a sufficiently long period of time, then it would happen automatically and there would not be such a noticeable drain of energy upon the disciple or the group. I find many of the thought forms which are entertaining your mental body and which tend to indicate the state of consciousness there, many of your feelings and the more concrete forms in the etheric and physical brain consciousness itself, or the field of force, to be somewhat in misalignment or contradiction with that which overshadows you generally as a group. I find that certain streams of energy, which are the result of decisions, have somehow been deflected. I find that thoughts are being entertained by the group, in various areas of it, which are a bit misaligned between the subjective condition of the incarnate group and that which overshadows. Because of the accent upon it, it is a little bit unusual for this group to be in this condition. I am therefore bringing it to your attention and suggesting that perhaps some of it could be corrected if the right questions are presented. While this is common generally, there is always a certain amount of it present within the life of any disciple or group of disciples. It is rather exaggerated. I have not seen it so within this group to such a degree ever before. Please do not permit this to alarm you. It is undoubtedly a passing condition, but it could result in much outer confusion, chaos, experience which would otherwise be unnecessary in order to bring you back to a more perfect alignment with that which overshadows you. You are not carrying the energy of synthesis to the degree that you should or would were this condition not present. The condition is causing you to be unable to carry that energy as perfectly as you would otherwise. The energy of synthesis, which you are not carrying as much as you should, is not causal to this condition. The condition itself is causal. There is a misalignment here within the whole group. There are many misalignments between the incarnating consciousness in its thought life, its feeling life, and particularly that which is closest to the brain between this and that which overshadows the group as a whole. Different ones of you are sharing in this condition to different degrees, but it is tending to put you out of phase with that which should be precipitating through the whole of your instrumentality and into your life and affairs. That which should be precipitating mentally, that which should be coming into the feeling aspect, that which should be coming into the etheric network and the brain and from here out into the field of action, is not because of this condition of many misalignments. Much work has been done to invoke the energy of synthesis, and that work has met with a certain degree of failure or what might be called frustration because of the many misalignments. There is lack of integration, a rather alarming lack, not so much in the outer physical sense but in the thought life of the group. I find lines, fractures, gaps, a condition particularly in the thought life on mental levels and as it is reflected on down through the astral, the etheric, and the physical brain consciousness. The group is simply not as integrated as normal. This includes practically all of the group's thought forms regarding this subject, not all, but the majority of thought forms on mental levels, particularly as it comes down into the area of finance and money, etc. There is no alignment at all with that which overshadows. Rather than being aligned with that which overshadows you on soul levels, there is more alignment mentally within the thought life, as it reflects in the astral and etheric brain with race-mind thought forms, than there is with that which overshadows. This is what I mean by misalignment. As I look at the condition, I wonder how the overshadowing could come into the state of consciousness, particularly in the thought life itself. It is not only in this area, but in almost every area which concerns you. For instance, in the area of service itself, I find there is not the alignment that is normally present with that which directly overshadows. It looks to me as if you have been undergoing a rather severe attack, to be perfectly honest with you, on mental levels specifically. That attack has worked its way on down into and through the thought life to the very brain substance itself. Let us take this specific area, that which has to do with service itself, service to humanity, service to the Christ, to the divine plan. Ordinarily the group in its thought life is aligned vertically with that which overshadows it regarding service. Usually the group is well integrated in this area. Instead of this, I find a rather strange condition for this particular group mental body, in that I find thought forms within the race mind consciousness regarding the subject, others aligned with another thought form, some of them in direct opposition, so that through these misalignments the energy comes in which causes a disintegrating effect rather than an integrating one. This is true in almost all of the areas of thought itself in the group life. Those who are not present in this area share in this condition. My own perspective and my own knowledge of this particular group leads me to consider one of two things, perhaps both. One would be some form of group therapy. The other would be a definite effort or re-evaluation of the thought forms individually and collectively which the group is entertaining. One or the other of these methods, perhaps both, could do much to clarify the situation and perhaps correct it. The sense of inadequacy is astral. It is caused by the thought forms being entertained because they are not adequate to the situation. It is either a result of a phase that you have been undergoing in your growth and development or a definite attack. I have not had the opportunity to observe the condition in the making. It is almost as if something were moving you away from or out of your discipleship, not in intent or motive or aspiration, but as if something were moving you away from your discipleship that has been to this point normal to you. There is so much overshadowing the group regarding cooperative leadership. A clarification upon this subject, the concept itself and its practical application to the daily life and affairs. I would imagine that such an overshadowing would cause pressure in the center system itself, particularly of those of you who are receptive or tend to have the greatest receptivity to that which overshadows. I would be inclined to think it would create pressure upon the center system itself and you would feel it. Also, there is a great deal overshadowing regarding economy with which you are not in any way aligned. Then there is one other area, and that has to do, as you must suspect, with the center itself, the various individual functions within the center, the relationship to center function. These are the three predominant fields of knowledge or energy, ideas, concepts which directly overshadow you from the spiritual soul level or the Ashramic group level. I could honestly say that no three of you are aligned with the same thought form. If you can approach this from an analytical perspective, endeavoring to analyze wherein correction is needed so that you will not permit that which I tell you to create depression, a sense of failure, etc., which so often goes along with something of this kind, I can point out some very specific instances here that are quite apparent. There is something that is amiss. It needs to be analyzed before it can be corrected. The lines of force to which you refer and which were discussed with you previously I do see. There is a condition manifesting in the wake of contacts having been made, certain opportunities presented, which could only be described as one of great confusion. I do see definitely where opportunity has been missed or muffed. I find that, due to wrong or lack of understanding of economy and therefore a lack of right alignment of this particular effort with the divine purpose of the ashram, there is, or has come into this, a deflecting, disturbing, and disrupting energy which can only be defined as wrong motivation. I am not saying that the wrong motivation was conscious or deliberate or anything of this kind. It was a result of lack of understanding, therefore, lack of proper alignment. In observing the energy factors involved, I see where there was no leadership whatsoever insofar as this effort was concerned. There was no cooperation or coordination, no real plan which was formulated and then carried out. As a result, contacts made in this effort could not be called good relationships as far as service is concerned. Nothing was done to either develop the service potential of the group as a whole or to establish right relationship between the group and those with whom the contacts were made. On the contrary, the relationship subjectively is not good. This has pulled the mental energy of the group in varying directions so that it is not aligned with that which overshadows regarding cooperative leadership and economy itself. This is a condition which seems to be prevalent or repeated in almost all of the lines of force which have made their subjective connectivity with the outer world of affairs the economic structure within which humanity lives and moves and has its being. Even in those specifics, those which are strictly subjective and have not yet been made objective, there is a repetition happening here. The same disturbing factor has entered into these lines or points of connectivity, so that almost any objective outpicturing would be of little benefit or effectiveness insofar as your service is concerned. There is a condition within the group which has been always one of its problems, but which has become emphasized at this time very pronounced. In looking over the male membership of the group, there are very few of you who are carrying specifically, deliberately, the energy of purpose. Very few of you are carrying that energy specifically into your daily life and affairs and the efforts which you are making. You are not carrying the energy of divine purpose as it is made available to you by the ashram. It is divine purpose which moves a disciple into a position of leadership. Within the group, there are two very strange conditions which immobilize leadership capacity or potential. Contrary to what you may think, there is much leadership potential and capacity that is unused, or which has not been used, within the group. There are two conditions here which immobilize it. There is a conflict. Conflict always arises out of misunderstanding, misinterpretation. This is the basic factor behind the conflict. If you will establish your higher alignment as I speak to you, with your own overshadowing spiritual soul, being receptive with as much soul consciousness as you can arrive at this moment, to the truth, then perhaps I can clarify this for you. Within the male membership of the group, there is a great desire on the one hand to assume leadership, not only as it relates to this group but as it relates to any field of activity or group of people with whom the disciple comes into contact. It is based upon a desire for power. I realize this does not look very good, but it is a factor which is very predominant. On the other hand, there is what might be called an unconscious knowledge of this mismotivation, this desire, which will not permit it any success, which will not permit it expression. There is a conflict between the desire to lead, to control, to assume and wield power for the sake of power itself and, on the other hand, there is a refusal to permit this expression. Therefore, the leadership of the group is immobilized. Any attempt at leadership falls apart in a network of wrong relationships and what might almost be called the forming from time to time of a center of negativity. This is not a very pretty picture. The only thing that will resolve this conflict and unlock the power potential and the leadership capacity of the group is an understanding of what leadership itself is insofar as the disciple is concerned and an understanding of cooperative leadership as the method, the New Age method of serving humanity. I ask you to think about this yourselves, and if, under your own overshadowing spiritual soul alignment, and all of the light of that soul which you can bring down into your brains, if, in this, you do not intuitively respond to this as a group, then throw it out of your minds and consider it no longer. If you do, I would suggest then that you look into this, pursue it as far as you can in an effort to invoke that which overshadows you on this subject itself. I want to put before you a goal insofar as this group effort is concerned, an immediate goal. When you all come together from your different places of residence and work to establish a center, there is a definite goal with each soul, shared by each soul, within the ashram that brought you here. It is one of extreme importance insofar as your immediate growth and development is concerned. The hierarchy has much work to do as you partially realize. As a group you have been undergoing training in a rather hit-and-miss fashion as your state of consciousness responded to higher impulse and invoked, demanded, certain of the wisdom which you each retained and entertained within your own soul. Your teachers at hierarchical levels merely communicate to you that which is wisdom within your own soul. The hierarchy needs disciples, it needs workers, it needs those souls in incarnation who can grasp one little tiny fragment of the plan for humanity in this time and place, just a fragment, who in grasping that little tiny bit can mobilize the energy, force, and substance of his instrument to promulgate, to promote, to carry out through manifestation in whatever degree or way is possible, this little bit of the plan. The hierarchy does not seek students who will sit day after day, and month after month, and year after year, and finally incarnation after incarnation, absorbing and soaking up the wisdom, being entertained by it. The hierarchy seeks those whom it can train and who will then go wherever it is they have to go, into a field of activity, and put what they have received into manifestation. The hierarchy does not seek those whom it is going to have to tell what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and why to do it. The hierarchy does not seek those who cannot make decisions for themselves and are so desirous of following the divine will that they will ask the masters or the senior disciples or whoever it might be, to make their decisions for them, to tell them what to do. The disciple is needed who can be counted upon, after he has received training, to make his own decisions and to face not only the possibility but the probability of making mistakes, of living through failure, of seeing much of what he endeavors come to naught, but still to persevere in his service activity, his service effort. The disciple is needed, is sought after, who will, once he has grasped the plan, once he has received the wisdom of his own soul, formulate his own plan of action, his own service activity and carry it forward without demanding the attention of the hierarchy, who is hard put to give its attention to those areas of human activity which demand that attention. The hierarchy has its job to do in relationship to humanity, that section of the hierarchy who works with humanity, and that job is not particularly the training of disciples, though this may surprise you. That job has to do with the wielding of hierarchical influence in ways which you are not yet ready to understand. Therefore, each one of you as a spiritual soul functioning and related within the ashram to the hierarchy, has formulated the goal to teach, to train, to condition the incarnate consciousness to take his share of the responsibility for the carrying of the divine plan into outer objective manifestation. It is the goal of the soul and the prime effort at this time to bring this group to the point where it will require very little instruction, comment, or contact verbally with any member of the hierarchy. There is sufficient time for you to integrate insofar as purpose and goal are concerned, for you to receive that wisdom, that conditioning and training necessary for you to enter into your function without further word from the hierarchy insofar as this entire incarnation is concerned. I know it is very pleasurable, it is gratifying to the ego to receive instructions from a master, whether it is through a station or through one's own brain, or whatever it might be, but do you realize that you are demanding attention that is greatly needed elsewhere? So there is this immediate goal within the soul on Ashramic levels, of every one of you gathered together in this area, to complete your training, to have done with it, and from that point then to enter into your service to humanity, being willing to make the mistakes that are a part of each one's own task, and in the making of those mistakes and their correction, in the problems encountered in the carrying forward of the service activity, to achieve your further evolutionary growth and development through service, and nothing else but service. A group of disciples such as you demands, contrary to what you might think, a great deal of expenditure of energy. You would equate it with time. It is not equated as time at hierarchical levels. Yet, you require much expenditure of energy. There are others in the world besides you who are ready for this training. There are others in the world besides you, who are further along than you are, who are ready for higher training. But that training cannot be made available to them until this group has achieved the goal of its training and provides then a vacancy, a place for them. I realize that these things have not been brought to your attention previously. It would be impossible for others to receive the training which they look for, while this group demands so much. It is time for you to look toward your maturity, to realize that whether ready or not, the time is coming when you will be called upon to function without the communication contact with the hierarchy, when you will be expected to take your share of the responsibility and to carry it out, giving to others the same privilege which you have had. It is my sincere belief that once the group incarnate within the brain realizes this goal and aspires to it, then will be that alignment from within the subjective thought life, the emotional life, the etheric, and the brain with that which directly overshadows, which will permit then the downflow of the overshadowing and complete the training and fulfill the goal of the group. There is a confusion or a general lack of understanding within the minds of many regarding their own function. This could be clarified by the light which pours down from each soul, if each would so align himself with it that he can isolate, in a sense, himself from the outer impacts of a horizontal nature and so receive the knowledge within the soul, of right place and function. There are several things which should be taken into consideration as this is done, which have to do with cooperative leadership. Cooperative leadership is or results in the perfect democracy. There is first the ability to be inspired, which is followed by the ability to inspire. This is a prime requisite insofar as cooperative leadership is concerned, and one should realize that the primary energy of the leader is that of inspiration. But this should not create within the concrete mind awareness, the lower consciousness, a misinterpretation as to responsibility. For, while the leader is not a dictator, he must nonetheless assume the responsibility of his function. Cooperative leadership is actually that cooperation between those leaders who have recognized one another's function and place, and give to one another, as well as take, the responsibility to carry out each's function.